Chapter 348 Should Return to the Prime Minister's Manor, Part 2, It's about to be the new year. Young miss, do you really plan on not returning to the Prime Minister's manor? Paya was standing at the dressing table and putting away the makeup supplies. It was the end of the year, so it was important to be dressed a little more beautifully. All of the exquisite and valuable accessories were brought out to match the clothing. Yin Jiaro sat at the foot of her bed and worked on an embroidery. After hearing this question, she put down her needle. That's right. It's about to be the new year. It's not quite right to celebrate the new year in someone else's home. I don't know if they will allow me to continue staying in Marquis Gu's manor. Paya was stunned. Young miss, you're only worried about if Lord Marquis Gu and the others will ask you to leave, but you should also think about our own manor. After all, you are a young miss of the Prime Minister's manor. It wouldn't be right to not go back to celebrate the new year, right? Yin Jiaro looked at her with a frown. Have you forgotten about how we desperately fled from that place? So what if I am a young miss of the Prime Minister's manor? Who truly treats me like one? She felt the gauze on her forehead. The scar underneath was faintly visible, but it was already much better than when it was completely dark. Unfortunately, despite Yu Fu trying all sorts of ideas, she could only treat her wound to this degree. It was impossible to restore her skin to how it was before. Every time that Paya saw the scar on Yin Jiao's face, she felt responsible. Though that is the case, this servant heard that His Majesty has allowed the former master to return to the manor to celebrate the new year. With the former master here, eldest young sir won't dare to do anything to young miss. Father will be coming back to celebrate the new year? Yin Jiao was extremely shocked. Back then, her father had been exiled for the crime of attempting to have the heir to Marquis Gu's manor assassinated. Put politely, he was allowed to retire and return to his family home, but the people in court knew the truth. Now that a new ruler had ascended, he was allowed to return. It seemed that the rumors were indeed true. His Majesty's trust in the Prime Minister's manor surpassed his trust in Marquis Gu's manor. She hastily asked Paya, will he return for the new year then leave, or will he be staying in the capital? Paya smiled and said, naturally, he will be staying in the capital. If he was only returning for the new year, how could this servant dare to have young miss go back? She thought that news of Yin Yang returning to the capital would surely make Yin Jiao rejoice. Who knew that she would frown even more? Father committed such a grave crime. The late emperor's treatment was already merciful enough. For His Majesty to do this now, it must be because of eldest brother's actions for His Majesty. To the people of Marquis Gu's manor, how much must this hurt? Paya said. Young miss has lived in Marquis Gu's manor for 2 months and has begun speaking up for the people of the manor. Although the people of Marquis Gu's manor have treated us extremely well, young miss is, in the end, a member of the Prime Minister's manor. Paya was afraid that she would not understand and desperately said, no matter how much young miss hates the eldest young sir and likes Marquis Gu's manor, young miss should understand. If you don't return to the Prime Minister's manor, there will be no way for you to officially marry the second young sir. With how high of a standing the second young sir occupies, how could he possibly marry a girl with no family background? Ever since Yin Jiao's face was injured, she did not dare consider marrying Jiu Juji. Alright, what is this about getting married or not? Not to mention me being a young miss of the Prime Minister's manor, but even if I was a princess, the second young sir might not want to marry me. Though she said this, she could not help but admit that there was some logic to what Paya had said. She had been living in Marquis Gu's manor this entire time, but who would care for her in the future? She was living here in a dubious manner. After the new ruler ascended, Kuan Yuyang returned to her own manor. It was now time for her to consider leaving. As for whether or not she would leave and how she would leave, she would need to talk about it with Jiu Juji. Yin Jiao suddenly stood up, straightened out her bangs, and applied another layer of red lipstick. Paya said, young miss, where are you going? Yin Jiao tidied herself up while saying, I am going to look for the second young sir. There's no need for you to come. I will go by myself. Paya knew that she did not want to be disturbed by anyone when speaking with Jiu Juji. She just brought out a cloak and draped it on her. Young miss, take your time. It's hard to walk in the snow. This servant will pack a hand warmer for you. After carefully taking care of her appearance, Yin Jiao allowed Peya to put the cloak on her. With a smile, she walked out. She just wanted to ask Jiyu Juji one question. Did he want her to leave or not? Arriving outside Jiyu Joga's courtyard, she saw that the door to the room was closed. A male servant was sweeping away the snow in the courtyard and saw Yin Jiao. Young Miss Yin? Have you come to look for the second young sir? Yin Jiao smiled and recognized that it was Zhong Xia from Jiyu Joga's courtyard. That's right. Is he not in? Zhong Xia smiled and said, our second young sir has gone drinking with third young sir. It was the third young sir who forcibly dragged him out. In the past, third young sir always said that second young sir drinking all of the time was bad, but this time, he was the one who insisted on going. You didn't see that scene, but it made me laugh so hard that my belly hurt. Yin Jiao could not help but laugh, covering her mouth. Then where have they gone? I have something that I wish to talk to the second young sir about. Zhong Xia leaned on the broom and pointed toward the garden. If they aren't next to the rockery in the garden, they will be at the pavilion. How about I have someone find them for young Miss Yin? No need, I will go myself. Yin Jiao thanked him with a smile and then headed in the direction that he had pointed. Zhong Xia watched her parting figure with a foolish smile. He thought to himself that this young Miss Yin was about to become the second wife of the manor. She had been living in the manor for 2 months. Who knew when the marriage would happen? It was a pity that there was a scar on her face. Thinking about her former appearance. Chapter 349 Carry out an important task. Part 3 Following the rocky path to the backyard, the garden looked very desolate during winter. Fortunately, after a day of snow, the barren branches were covered in snow. It ended up looking quite pretty under a layer of silver. A cold wind blew, and everything was covered in a layer of white. Someone spoke in a loud voice. That brazen Yin Shuo. He actually wants to marry Yu Fu? Does he not know that the late emperor personally sanctioned the engagement between Yu Fu and eldest brother? It was Jiyu Joga's voice. Yin Jiao hid behind the rockery, as the wind carried the conversation past the rockery and into her ears. The two people on the other side, however, did not notice her presence. Jiyu Hanmo helped him into the pavilion. Second brother, don't rush to get upset. Yin Shuo even dares to bully Princess Danyang, so what is there that he doesn't dare to do? I heard that Princess Danyang was severely ill and cannot even attend the New Year's banquet. Yin Jiao covered her mouth. She did not think that in a mere 2 months, Princess Danyang's illness would get so much worse. Although she did not like Princess Danyang's domineering personality, she had also been treated well by her. She was the one who had brought in the imperial physician to treat her wound, and, more importantly, she was still her eldest sister-in-law. Yin Jiao felt a little saddened. Jiyu Juji said, it was actually like that. Just what sort of mind-altering concoction is he feeding His Majesty? He is the mastermind behind a plan to kill his ruler, yet His Majesty has absolute faith in him. It's a pity that the eldest prince is on his own on the road to the underworld. He should go and keep the eldest prince company. When Yin Jiao heard this, she was not particularly shocked. Jiyu Juji and the others had never talked to her about this matter, but she was not stupid. She could guess how they felt based on their expressions and tones. It was not just because of them. Rather, it was because she understood Yin Shuo. This eldest brother of hers, who had always been cold and unfeeling, had been sought out by the eldest prince, so how could he possibly have gone undercover to look for evidence for the second prince? This was not his style. Jiyu Hanmo let out a sigh. Did second brother think that I didn't think about it? Father has given up control of many military matters. This is the same as giving up a portion of our military power. But His Majesty still does not think that it was enough, and Marquis Gu's manor is no longer treated as warmly as before. I heard Steward Qi talk about this one topic, but I don't know if it's true or not. What topic? He said that Eunuch Kai hinted to father that Yu Fu might be married into the palace to become empress, but father refused to agree. The wine jug was heavily placed on the table. Since the matter was related to Yu Fu, Jiyu Juji immediately became infuriated. It must have been spurred on by Yin Shuo. That Yin Shuo, I can't forgive him. Jiyu Hanmo rushed to calm him down. Second brother, This matter hasn't yet been decided. Father does not plan to tell Yu Fu for fear of disturbing her. You absolutely must not speak about it, and, even more importantly, you must not be rash. Jiu Juji had drank too much wine, and his mind was a bit hazy. Being consoled by Jiu Hanmo, he slowly calmed down. He suddenly remembered something. Third brother, if we can't find any clues of Yin Shao's participation in the assassination of the late emperor, can we do anything from Jiao's angle? Yin Jiao heard her name mentioned and became a little nervous. Jiu Hanmo said, elder brother is talking about young Miss Yin's background. Once word of young Miss Yin's birth mother being a female general from Western Kuan is made public, Yin Yang won't be able to escape being found guilty, and it might implicate Yin Shao. But, won't the innocent young Miss Yin also get hurt? Crack. It sounded like a branch snapping in the snow, and it came from behind the rockery. Jiu Hanmo immediately became alert. Who's there? A girl walked out from behind the rockery. Wearing a rose-colored fox fur cloak, her head hung low with a white gauze covering her forehead. Jiu Hanmo thought to himself that things were bad. The girl raised her head. Sure enough, it was Yin Jiao. Jiu Juji had also mostly sobered up. Jiao? Why? Why have you come here? Yin Jiao lifted the hem of her dress and walked forward. Her usually gentle and graceful movements were now very firm. It was as if she had made an incredibly important decision. She walked to the pavilion and looked at the two. What female general from Western Kuan? You said that my birth mother is a female general from Western Kuan? Father said that she was a common woman from a brothel. How could that identity have changed to a general from Western Kuan? Jiu Hanmo furrowed his brow. Initially, he had wanted to drink with Jiu Juji because he was feeling annoyed from hearing about Yin Shao wanting to marry Yu Fu. Who knew that they would be overheard by Yin Jiao. Now, things were even more complicated. He glanced at Jiu Juji. This matter should be told to young Miss Yin by second brother. I will be leaving first. Farewell. Come back. Jiu Juji reached out but only managed to grab a corner of his robe. He actually used Qinggong to flee. The two sat across from each other in the pavilion. One desperately tried to conceal the matter, while the other was in tears but was resolute. Taking advantage of his tipsiness, Jiu Juji decided to stop worrying about this matter. Alright, I will tell you. But you absolutely cannot tell anyone, especially your father and brother. Do you understand? Yin Jiao nodded. Don't worry. I absolutely won't do anything that would cause harm to Marquis Gu's manor. She wore a serious expression, while Jiu Juji tipsily squinted at her. Reaching out, he patted her head. There's no need to be nervous. Your mother was a very strong and courageous woman. You should be happy. At dinner the next day, Yin Jiao suddenly went to say goodbye to Yu Fu. Yu Fu was a little surprised. You're returning to the Prime Minister's manor? Did the manor's servants not do a thorough enough job of taking care of you? Yin Jiao repeatedly shook her head. That's not it. The servants in Marquis Gu's manor are well trained and have taken very good care of me. It's just that it's about to be the end of the year, and it wouldn't do for me to stay at Marquis Gu's manor forever, thus I was thinking of going back. She had stayed in Marquis Gu's manor for 2 months, and Yu Fu had done her best to treat her scar. She was full of gratitude toward Yu Fu, and the two had become good friends. Yu Fu decided to just be blunt. Are you not afraid of your eldest brother hurting you after you return to the Prime Minister's manor? Yin Jiao laughed. Don't worry. My father returned today. With him here, eldest brother won't dare to do anything rash. Your father. Yin Jiao did not miss the look of disappointment flashing through her eyes. She suddenly kneeled in front of Yu Fu, and the latter quickly had Yaolan help her up. Jiao, what are you doing? Yin Jiao said, I know that my father committed a grave crime and nearly took the eldest young sir's life. I also know that my eldest brother has tried to oppose Marquis Gu's manor in court many times, which forced Lord Marquis Jiu to hand over a portion of his military strength. My Yin family has let down Marquis Gu's manor, and I apologize on behalf of my father and brother. Yu Fu said, quickly get up. They are them, and you are you. You have a kind heart, and those things have nothing to do with you. A kind heart? Princess, I am unworthy of such a compliment. Yin Jiaro smiled sarcastically. Did you know that I wasn't completely oblivious to the underhanded methods that my father and brother employed in court? Just like this time, when eldest brother plotted the assassination of the late emperor. The truth is that I knew about it. Yu Fu was stunned, but she continued, I was even their accomplice, as I helped them by playing the role of a honey trap. Did you know that when I first met the second young sir, it was an assignment from my father and brother? Yu Fu looked at her without speaking. This time, Yin Jiaro was the one who was stunned. You knew. You all knew. Yu Fu did not plan to continue discussing this matter. She just held Yin Jiaro's hand. All right, that's all in the past. There's no need to bring it up again. After those things happened, you have treated people with sincerity, so there won't be anyone who can use those things against you. Do you understand? Yin Jiaro said, but I can tell that you're very disappointed and feel very sad. The one responsible for murdering the ruler is held in high regard in court, while a loyal family like Marquis Gu's manor is being suppressed. What sort of morality is this? As someone from the Yin family, not even I can bear to witness it. How can you possibly accept it? Regardless of whether or not I can, Head General won't oppose any of His Majesty's decisions. It's as you say. Marquis Gu's manor is loyal, and Head General is a loyal subject. He would rather relinquish control of the troops under his command if that meant remaining loyal to His Majesty. As Yu Fu spoke, she suddenly remembered what Eunuch Kai had mentioned when he had come to deliver the gifts, and her heart turned cold. Yin Jiaro seemed to understand what she was talking about. Then if His Majesty insisted on having you become Empress, would Lord Marquis Gu still refuse to oppose him? Yu Fu suddenly turned toward her. How did you know about this? Yin Jiaro frowned. Recently, everyone in court knows about it. His Majesty previously brought this up with Lord Marquis Gu, but Lord Marquis Gu did not agree. Second young sir and the others thought that you were naturally less sensitive to romantic matters and did not know about His Majesty's feelings toward you. That's why they have been hiding it from you this entire time. But based on what I've seen, you clearly know. Yu Fu smiled wryly. Eunuch Kai also implied it to me, but I put it off. Yin Jiaro said, you can put it off for some time, but you can't ignore it forever. A starving camel is still larger than a horse. No matter how much His Majesty tries to suppress Marquis Gu's manor, it will not collapse, but His Majesty will eventually run out of patience. My eldest brother will also refuse to just wait around. This is the reason that I must return to the Prime Minister's manor. You mean to say that you will be returning to the Prime Minister's manor to help keep an eye on Yin Shuo's movements for me? Yin Jiaro suddenly smiled, revealing her pearly white teeth. It was unlike her usual ladylike demeanor. I heard that my birth mother was a female general. I want to be like her and do something important. Chapter 350 Yin Yang Returns, Part 1. The lengthy poem sounds burdened and lonesome, but when the grand carriage returns to carry out an inspection. The return home in silk clothes is of lesser import, as all riches shall be bequeathed to the ex-wife. A small blue carriage passed by on the long street but came to a screeching halt upon hearing this poem recited at a nearby restaurant. A wrinkled hand reached out from the carriage's window and tremblingly lifted a corner of the curtain. This revealed an aged face with eyes that were no longer as sharp as before. He slightly lifted his head and saw the words Yushan building on the plaque outside. What is this place? The servant driving the carriage heard his hoarse voice and hurriedly said, Master, this is the best restaurant in the capital. Even His Majesty has visited it and wrote a couplet for it. I heard that it's a business under Princess Xinjiang's ownership. They are always bringing in people to perform for the guests, and that voice must have belonged to the singer inside. The elderly man slowly nodded and took his time contemplating the name Princess Xinjiang while lowering the curtain. He had only been gone for 1 year, but that adopted girl in Marquis Gu's manor with an unclear background had already become a princess. Just what sort of drastic change had occurred in the capital? The small carriage continued on its way and came to a stop in front of the Prime Minister's manor. The servant at the gate saw the run-down carriage and snorted with contempt. Yet another one has come to curry favor with our Prime Minister's manor. Even the person riding in this sort of carriage dares to come and curry favor with the Prime Minister's manor. Did they not see that even great lords riding in pearl-adorned carriages pulled by 4 horses have been driven away? As he said this, he waved his hand to motion for the small carriage to be chased away. Who knew that the driver of the carriage would be the first to speak? "Hey, why haven't you gone to get the eldest young sir and young miss to come and receive master? Have 2 people come and help carry master's luggage." "Master!" The servant froze. Master, you've returned. Quickly go and help master out." The latter command was directed to the servants. The group that was about to chase them away with fiendish expressions saw his expression change at an incredible speed. They too hastily put on fawning smiles and bowed before moving next to the small carriage. The driver helped Yin Yang out of the carriage, and everyone was shocked by the sight. Master had only gone to the old family home for a year, so how did he age like this? Yin Shoro and Yin Jiao exited the manor one after the other. Rushing forward, they moved to support Yin Yang. The sight of father and son, who had been separated for a long time, caused tears and snot to flow. Yin Jiao was already sobbing. "Father, how did you become so thin? Are you cold?" She took a hand warmer from Peia and stuffed it into Yin Yang's hands. The latter immediately noticed the white gauze on her head. "What happened to your face?" Yin Shoro felt his heart drop, as he thought to himself that this matter could not be hidden from Yin Yang. He could only smile and say, "Father, it's cold outside. Let's go in and have a leisurely chat." From the main gate to the main hall, Yin Yang paid close attention to the atmosphere in the manor. There were no changes from when he had left, and the main hall was still clean. It seemed that it was being cleaned from time to time. But he could acutely feel that something had changed. The servants' expressions had changed. They were all full of joy and pride, and they were much more respectful toward the eldest young sir, Yin Shoro. "Eldest young sir, Lord Liu from the Board of Civil Office has come and requested a meeting. Will you be seeing him or see him? Did you not see that father returned today? I won't be seeing anyone." When a servant came in to report, Yin Shoro glanced in his direction, and the servant immediately bowed and retreated from the main hall. Yin Yang noted his assertiveness and felt his heart sink a little but did not say anything. It was only after sitting down in the head seat with a cup of hot tea in his hand did he say, "You are now the Prime Minister. You stand above all but one and are heavily favored by His Majesty. That Lord Liu must have come to curry favor with you, yes?" Yin Shoro spoke inattentively. When His Majesty sent the New Year's gifts, the Prime Minister's manor was the first to receive the gifts. In the past, these people didn't even think about us, but now that His Majesty favors us, they do their utmost to curry favor with us. Just how should Sun look at them? Yin Yang knew that Yin Shoro enjoyed the new ruler's favor but did not know that he was being favored to such a degree. He said in surprise, "Then what of Marquis Gu's manor?" The corners of Yin Shoro's lips slightly curled up. His Majesty only sent New Year's gifts to the princess at Marquis Gu's manor. As for Marquis Gu's manor itself, they will need to wait a little longer. I don't think Marquis Gu's manor has ever been given the cold shoulder to such a degree before. "Father, are you happy?" "Happy? Ah, I'm happy." Yin Yang was thinking about something. As he turned to look toward Yin Jiao, "What exactly happened to cause the injury to your face? Let father take a look. How did it affect such a large area?" He removed the white gauze, and the dark scar beneath it caused him to frown. He immediately looked toward Yin Shoro with displeasure. "When father left, I told you two that you two must support each other. How could you let your younger sister get this injured?" Yin Shoro looked toward Yin Jiao. Rather than waiting for her to voice her complaints, it would be better for him to tell Yin Yang first. Sooner or later, this matter would be exposed. Yin Yang might get angry over this, but he would never overreact and have a falling out with him over Yin Jiao. He had faith in this. Just as he was about to speak, Yin Jiao took the opportunity and spoke first. "It was a result of my willfulness. Eldest brother told me to do something, but in my carelessness, I hurt my head. Blaming eldest brother, I refused to see an imperial physician. When eldest brother did bring an imperial physician in to treat me, I refused to take the medicine and refused to be treated. That was what caused the scar." Yin Shoro froze and pursed his lips but did not speak. This younger sister of his had lived in Marquis Gu's manor for 2 months and suddenly returned yesterday. Upon entering, she said that she knew that father would be returning soon and wanted to bury the hatchet with him. She wanted to act as if the things in the past had not happened. Yin Shuo did not know what plan she had up her sleeves, but he could not refuse. If Yin Yang returned and found out that she was not in the Prime Minister's manor, things would be even more disastrous. He initially thought that Yin Jiaro would surely complain about him to Yin Yang, but she actually took the initiative to cover up for him. Why was she doing this? Yin Shuo never believed in someone being kind just to be kind, even if that person was his own younger sister. He cautiously observed Yin Jiao and suddenly heard Yin Yang say, "Why have I not seen Princess Danyang? When you sent that letter to tell father, father was overjoyed. It's just that there were a few items left behind by your mother that could not be delivered to daughter-in-law in time." Yin Shuo smiled and gave a look to the servant at the door. The servant swiftly ran off to invite Princess Danyang. "Speaking of, Danyang still has not greeted father as your daughter-in-law. Son will have someone bring her to come and greet father." He had used the word bring and not invite. Yin Yang seemed to notice that something was off, and he could not help but stand up in shock upon seeing Princess Danyang walk in. She was thin and wearing plain clothes. Yin Shuo grabbed his hand. "Father, please sit. Danyang is of the younger generation. Morals dictate that she should greet father." Yin Yang furrowed his brow and quietly said, "Morally speaking, this is true, but there's a difference between rulers and subjects. When a princess arrives, it's not like with most other families. You and I are subjects, while she is from the ruling family." Yin Shuo smiled and looked down toward Princess Danyang. She stepped forward and bowed to Yin Yang. "Greetings, former Prime Minister." Yin Yang felt the atmosphere was odd. The letter clearly stated that Yin Shuo and Princess Danyang were living a normal newlywed life, however, he felt that these two did not seem like a newlywed couple at all. Instead, they felt like rivals, neither wanting to look at the other. Before Yin Yang could speak, Yin Shuo stood up and scolded her. "It's the end of the year, yet you're wearing such plain clothes. It's also a good day since father returned today. Are you trying to curse my Prime Minister's manner?" Yin Yang was shocked, never thinking that he would openly scold Princess Danyang in front of him. Seeing Yin Jiaro wear a distant and uncaring expression while sipping tea on her own, Princess Danyang's status in the manor was clear to see. Princess Danyang did not show any reaction to being insulted and scolded. She just looked up and sneered, saying, "Father Emperor passed away less than 3 months ago. As his daughter, tell me, what is wrong with my show of filial piety? Could it be that husband wanted me to wear a set of red clothes and celebrate the new year with you?" A look of fierceness flashed through Yin Shuo's eyes. Yin Jiaro stealthily looked up and forced herself to continue feigning aloofness. Yin Yang immediately moved to advise against this. "All right, you should be a little more polite to Princess. What she said is right. His Majesty's mourning period has not yet ended. Though it's the end of the year, we must not celebrate too much. We should be a little more reserved." Saying this, he walked over to Princess Danyang and gently said, "When Princess arrived in the Prime Minister's manor, this old man was in the old home and could not come to greet you. In accordance with the Yin family's rules, this old man has a few accessories that the late madam wore that shall be bequeathed to Princess. They are items that my mother handed down." Yin Jiaro smiled and said, "Those accessories were given to mother by grandmother. Mother would then hand them down to her daughter-in-law. Not even her own daughter would have a chance of receiving them. Eldest sister-in-law must accept them." Yin Yang nodded with a smile. The vigorous and resolute Prime Minister Yin of the past was now nothing more than an old man watching over the younger generation. Although Princess Danyang's heart was full of hatred, she still nodded to Yin Yang. "Many thanks, former Prime Minister." Tien, the poem at the start is quite likely to be mistranslated. Chapter 351. What exactly is going on? Part 2. After the conversation, Yin Yang and Yin Shuo returned to the outer study. Yin Yang then ordered a servant to go and invite an imperial physician to come and treat Yin Jiao, saying that he was worried that if a girl had a scar on her face, she would not be able to get married. He did not know that Yin Jiao's scar could not be treated. She did not expose this matter, only saying that she would accompany Princess Danyang back to the eastern courtyard. While she was on her way, she said for the imperial physician to come and examine Princess Danyang. Yin Shuo did not move to stop her. Any imperial physician who came to the Prime Minister's manor would know what illnesses they could treat and what illnesses they could not treat. Yin Yang stepped into the outer study. The light coming through the windows was a little bright. The entire study was bathed in light, making it completely different from the dim room that it had been before. He was stunned. For the first time, he felt that he was no longer the master of the Prime Minister's manor. "You've turned the outer study," Yin Shuo quickly cupped his hands and said, "I took the initiative to change a number of things and hope that Father will forgive me. Since I am heavily favored by His Majesty and have my status as a husband to the imperial family, the manor receives far more guests than it did before. There are some things that need to be discussed in the outer study, and keeping it as dark as it was in the past would arouse suspicion." Yin Yang nodded but looked as if he had something on his mind. "That's right. You are the prestige of the current court. You have already surpassed Father." Yin Shuo feared that he would overthink things and quickly said, "No matter how tall a mountain gets, it can never rise as high as the sun. Father is Father. No matter how high sun climbs, Father will always be the most important person in Son's heart. This was originally Father's study. If Father does not like the changes, it can be changed back for Father to use." Yin Yang smiled. "There's no need. The brightness is quite nice. In the past, only the two of us came here, so it was fine for it to be a little darker. You're right that now that you are receiving more people now, it should be a little brighter. What would Father do with this study? I no longer have any official matters to work on or any office work. You can use it yourself. At any rate, the main hall has a small study. If Father wishes to read or work on calligraphy, that place will suffice." He spoke earnestly, and Yin Shuo did not continue to press the issue. Yin Yang walked around the study and saw that the desk was covered in a number of texts. He subconsciously reached out to read one but retracted it. These texts were for the Prime Minister, and he was no longer the Prime Minister. Even if they were father and son, it was best if there was a clearer distinction when it came to things pertaining to court affairs and influence. He sat down in an armchair to the side and glanced at Yin Shuo. "The old home is far away, and there are many things that you have written about that Father does not know much about. But Father has yet to become muddled with old age. From the moment that I stepped into the manor to this very moment, all of you have been spouting nothing but lies. Do you think that Father has become old and muddled?" His gaze was sharp, just like when he was dubbed the hawk-eyed Prime Minister in court. Yin Shuo was shocked and quickly stepped forward. "Son doesn't dare. Whatever Father wishes to know, Son will definitely tell Father. Son would not dare to hide anything." "Then why don't you tell me first about what exactly happened with His Majesty's assassination?" Yin Jiaro accompanied Princess Danyang back to her room and dismissed all servants aside from Peia and Diana. "Princess, the imperial physician will be here shortly. I will have him examine you. The scar on my forehead can never be treated, and I have accepted that, but your illness cannot be ignored forever." As a girl, though not yet married, Yin Jiaro remembered some things that the granny responsible for teaching her taught her. Every time that she thought about this, she felt extremely saddened. She had formed a kinship with Princess Danyang through their shared suffering. They both had to survive under Yin Shuo's cruelty. Princess Danyang smiled. "Stop calling me princess. The emperor in the imperial palace is my elder brother, but he doesn't care at all whether I live or die. He only cares about Yin Shuo, the Prime Minister who can help him accumulate influence. You and I are both just chess pieces to our families. You clearly know this, yet you call me princess. It just feels like a joke to me." Yin Jiaro thought about it for a bit. She hated Yin Shuo a great deal, so she would probably dislike being called eldest sister-in-law. Thus she said, "Then, how about I call you by your given name?" Princess Danyang nodded and said, "As for the matter of having that imperial physician examine me, there's no need to worry about it." "Oh, did you think that Yin Shuo wouldn't know that you would think of having the imperial physician examine me? He wouldn't allow an imperial physician to know about my illness, and even if they did find out, he would allow them to let His Majesty find out. Even all of the imperial physicians have been taken in by eldest brother. That doesn't seem to be the case. He can take in one or two, but there are too many imperial physicians, and there are many officials in court. Someone would eventually tell His Majesty about my condition. The corners of Princess Danyang's lips were curled up, but her eyes were cold and full of despair. Do you think that His Majesty has truly been deceived and has not saved me because of that? In the end, it's just that he doesn't care about me. In the past, he would think highly of me because I could talk him up in front of Father Emperor. Now that he is the ruler, the only ones he cares about are the officials with power. For example, Yin Shuo. Yin Jiaro seemed to have an idea, suddenly saying, "But the imperial physicians all want to try to get close with Yu Fu. If I mention Yu Fu's name, they might be willing to earnestly treat your illness." Princess Danyang had not heard that name in such a long time that it actually felt as though she had been isolated in a different world. She lifted her head and blankly looked at Yin Jiao. "Yu Fu? Oh, sure enough, you lived in Marquis Gu's manor for 2 months and have already gotten familiar enough to call her by her name." Chapter 352 Related to You, Part 3. Yin Jiao fell silent for a moment. She knew that Princess Danyang and Yu Fu were not on good terms. Back then, the one whom Princess Danyang wanted to marry was Jiyu Shubai. However, Jiyu Shubai did not want to marry her. After Yu Fu appeared, she obtained Jiyu Shubai's love and affection, and this was true of the other members of Marquis Gu's manor. This caused the self-important Princess Danyang to become envious to the point of going mad. Things only started to get better after she married into the Prime Minister's manor. Princess Danyang said, "You wanted to bring an imperial physician in to treat me. I believe this isn't just to repay me for inviting an imperial physician for you, right? The people in Marquis Gu's manor sent you to do it." No, that's not it." Yin Jiao quickly waved her hands. "The only reason that I was able to leave the Prime Minister's manor is that the third young sir came looking for you. But it wasn't Marquis Gu's manor's people who wanted to let His Majesty know about your situation. It was me." "You?" Yin Jiao nodded. "Do you find it incredibly hard to believe that I would want to ruin the glorious position that the Prime Minister's manors currently enjoys and want to expose my own eldest brother?" "Expose?" "The exposing that you are talking about, it's not just his harsh treatment of me, is it?" Princess Danyang looked at her with a frown. There was a beautiful resonance between the two girls who shared feelings of sympathy in their dire situations. She seemed to instantly gain an understanding from the look in Yin Jiao's eyes. She trembled. It was Yin Shuo who killed Father Emperor?" Yin Jiao did not answer her, as her gaze landed on her white dress. The Princess Danyang, who usually dressed in flashy colors, was currently wearing plain clothes, giving her a uniquely beautiful appearance. Her body swayed, and she nearly fell to the floor. Yin Jiao quickly moved to support her. "You absolutely must not reveal it. His Majesty will not believe it, and you will end up being killed." Princess Danyang nodded. She had been by Yin Shuo's side for quite some time, and she knew just how ruthless that man could be. But since she knew about this, she could not just sit around and do nothing. "Jiao, will you be attending the palace's New Year's banquet?" Yin Jiao slightly furrowed her brow. "In the past, before I was disfigured, they would not allow me to frequently go into the palace." She paused when she said this, then suddenly remembered why Yin Yang and Yin Shuo did not allow her to go into the palace. It was because her birth mother was Liu Yinyan, a female general from Western Kuan. They were worried that if she made an appearance in front of people from outside the family, those outsiders might recognize that she had some of the same facial features as the female general from back then. Even if that female general had passed away over a decade ago, and nearly nobody remembered her appearance, there was still Jiyu Huijiang. Before leaving Marquis Gu's manor, Jiyu Huijiang himself told her that she looked almost exactly like Liu Yinyan. It was just that one's brows had a vigorous and valiant appearance, while the other was more emotional and expressive. In that moment, Yin Jiao no longer wanted to be a weak and useless girl. Princess Danyang reached out and waved her hand in front of her eyes. "What are you thinking about?" "Ah, it's nothing." Yin Jiao regained her composure. "I was saying that now that I have been disfigured, they're even more unlikely to allow me to go into the palace." "But you can go into the palace. Me. Princess Danyang was feeling a little uncertain. Yin Shuo might not allow me to go into the palace. Even if I do go, I am not certain that I will be able to do anything. What do you want to do? Princess Danyang smiled. What I want to do is naturally the same as what you want to do. The resentment for the murder of her father was absolutely irreconcilable. She absolutely could not allow Yin Shuo to go unpunished and wield great power in court. Yin Jiao thought for a bit. Danyang, don't be rash. Let me think about it properly. She slowly walked over to the table and sat down. Princess Danyang also followed her and sat down. She did not feel compelled to rush her. After a long pause, Yin Jiao said, "As His Majesty's younger sister, it would be unreasonable for you to not be allowed to attend the New Year's banquet. This is especially true now that father has returned. Father is someone who favors tradition, so I am guessing that eldest brother will allow you to attend. As for what you can do after entering the palace, all you can do is tell His Majesty about how eldest brother treats you. You absolutely must not tell him about how his involvement in the assassination of the emperor." Princess Danyang said, "Why can't I tell him? Could it be that it's not true?" Yin Jiao said, "Based on how much His Majesty currently trusts eldest brother, not to mention him not believing you, but even if he did believe you, eldest brother could also explain it to him as having been for the sake of helping His Majesty ascend the throne. Forgive me for speculating on a conspiracy, but if the late emperor did not die, His Majesty would not have become the emperor. Isn't that right?" Princess Danyang's entire body trembled but did not refute what Yin Jiao had said. She understood that Yin Jiao was right. Both the eldest prince and the second prince worked tirelessly for the throne. In their eyes, the life of the late emperor was worth less than the throne. When the late emperor had been sick and on the verge of death, the second prince was only occupied with the crown prince's position. When had he ever shown concern for the late emperor's condition? She suddenly laughed. "It's not speculation of a conspiracy. What you said is the truth. Does it just stop with His Majesty? Back then, was I not the same as His Majesty? I was only focused on helping him obtain the throne. All thoughts about what would happen after he ascended were cast to the back of my mind." She carefully thought for a moment, then looked at Yin Jiao. "Without evidence of Yin Shuo's participation in the assassination of the emperor, I will not bring it up in front of His Majesty. As for my own matters, there's even less need to bring it up. His Majesty does not care. He really does not care. There's nothing that we can do. All we can do is place our hope in Uncle Jiyu. Lord Marquis Jiyu? UN." Princess Danyang became serious and said, "I finally understand that the only person who was loyal to Father Emperor and cares about the truth of how Father Emperor died is Uncle Jiyu." Boom. Fireworks soared into the sky and exploded before quickly falling back toward the ground like shooting stars. Before the previous firework finished falling, the next firework was shot into the sky. The sound of fireworks exploding filled the air with no end in sight. A woman in a plain-colored dress stood outside the imperial hall with a few subordinates from the Prime Minister's manor surrounding her in case she made any suspicious moves. She let out a faint sigh. She knew that Yin Shuo would not allow her to get close to His Majesty. Him allowing her to enter the palace for the New Year's banquet was just for show. It was to cover things up with the other officials. "Tell His Majesty for me that I am not feeling well and will be leaving first. I wish His Majesty a Happy New Year and everything will go well." The subordinate quietly nodded, and one person entered the hall to report. The remaining subordinates surrounded Princess Danyang and accompanied her out of the palace. On the surface, it looked as if they were protecting her, but the truth was that they were monitoring her every move. The banquet was in full swing inside the hall, and Ning Chengji did not react to the news of Princess Danyang leaving early. From beginning to end, his gaze never left the seat below him and to his left. That seat that had usually been reserved for Marquis Gu's manor. This year, what caused many to feel surprised was that he did not leave it for Yin Shuo. Instead, he left it for Yu Fu. Ning Chengji picked up his wine kettle. Princess Zhenjiang is a princess who was conferred a title by the late emperor. She also has a fief. Among the few princesses, she is the noblest. The other nobles also lifted their cups but did not know how to respond to what Ning Chengji had said. Among all of the princesses, could it be that the noblest was not his own younger sister, Princess Danyang? She was the princess born of the empress. No matter how noble Yu Fu might have been, she was only the adopted daughter of Marquis Gu's manor. She was also a descendant of the deity of medicine, who had saved the late emperor's life. When it came to bloodlines, she still could not compare with Eastern Ling's princesses that were born to concubines. But Ning Chengji had said this, and nobody dared to refute it. They could only agree. That's right. When the late emperor passed away and the capital became chaotic, it was Princess Xinjiang who used her own guards to restore the peace. With one person bringing this up, Ning Chengji immediately put down his wine kettle and loudly said, "Who was it that said that?" Everyone immediately waved their hands, expressing that they had not said it. One low-ranked official gritted his teeth and stood up. "Scared witless," he said, "responding to your majesty, it was this official who said it." They were too far apart, and Ning Chengji stared at him for a long time. "Who are you?" This official is Shimen Chuang from the government of Linen. "Because of my contributions to quelling the unrest in the capital, your majesty benevolently allowed me to participate in the banquet." Ning Chengji laughed. "Ha ha ha, so you're Shimen Chuang. We know you, we know you. Didn't we confer you and Mo?" Eunuch Kai quietly reminded him from the side. "Mo Huangsha. Right, the general from the capital, Mo Huangsha. The two of you aided Princess Xinjiang in restoring peace to the capital and suppressing the bandits. We are quite pleased. What you just said was very good. Reward him. Reward him generously." Shimen Chuang hastily dropped to his knees to give thanks. He had nearly been scared to death by Ning Chengji, thinking that this new ruler disliked hearing someone speak highly of Princess Xinjiang. Who knew that he would be delighted and not furious? To have been rewarded generously for saying this really was a stroke of good fortune. Shimen Chuang kneeled and gave thanks to Ning Chengji and Yu Fu. "Many thanks, princess." "Many thanks, princess." Yu Fu sat in the seat reserved for the most revered official and just felt a chill. She looked to the seat across from her. This year, Marquis Gu's manor's seats had been pushed down quite a bit. Not only were they below Yin Shuo, but they were also below the members of the cabinet and Ji Daogong. Ji Yu Huijiang and Ji Yu Shubai made an appearance. One looked particularly calm, while the other worriedly looked at Yu Fu. Yu Fu dryly laughed and said to Shimen Chuang, "It's all His Majesty's benevolence. It's completely unrelated to me. Lord Shimen, there's no need to be so courteous." Ning Chengji's voice came from above. "Of course, it's related to you." Chapter 353. With the Empress seat as the prize, Yu Fu finally looked up toward the head seat. He was wearing a set of bright yellow dragon-embroidered robes and had a golden crown with 9 sets of beads on his head. He sat on a tall golden throne, and the glamour made it hard to see his expression. He was faintly smiling and looking in her direction. "If not for you, your timely actions, how could Shimen Chuang and Mo Huangshaw have managed to quell the chaos in the capital? We wished to reward you, and that is how they conveniently got rewarded." Another person stood up below. It was Mo Huangshaw, the other person who was conveniently rewarded. He and Shimen Chuang stood together and gave their thanks to Ning Chengji and to Yu Fu. Yu Fu slightly furrowed her brow, and her eyes became cloudy. Ning Chengji had elevated and praised her in front of military and civil officials, but what was he planning? Seeing that Yu Fu did not speak, he motioned for Shimen Chuang and Mo Huangshaw to return to their seats. The fireworks were still being set off outside. Their loud explosions made her feel uneasy. She glanced at the seats across from her, and a number of older officials wore worried expressions. Though she was young, she could understand why they were worried. The sound of strings and woodwinds rose, as 2 groups of performers entered the hall. In the cold of the 12th month, they wore thin and revealing clothes, as the silver bells around their ankles rang with their every move. "Your Majesty," Yu Fu opened her mouth, and the sound of the instruments immediately stopped. The 2 groups of dancers froze in place, not daring to move carelessly. Everyone turned to look at her. Yu Fu suddenly stood up. "The 3-month mourning period for the late emperor has not yet ended. Though the new year should be celebrated, it would not be good to celebrate too much. The fireworks, the merrymaking, the music and dancing, the fragrant wine. All of these are useless for mourning the late emperor. Your Majesty, please reconsider. She gave voice to what a number of the older officials were thinking. Senior Cabinet Minister Chen looked at her in shock but could not help but sigh in admiration. Who knew that this pampered princess would be so understanding? The rumors of her exceptional qualities were well earned. While this was happening, the hall fell completely silent. Nobody dared to do anything before Ning Chengji spoke. It was not as if nobody else had said what Yu Fu had just said. Before the Board of Rights arranged the banquet, Senior Cabinet Minister Chen led a group of cabinet ministers in jointly signing a petition to Ning Chengji to keep the banquet more modest during the mourning period. However, that petition was completely ignored. After that, they heard from a eunuch that Ning Chengji had slammed their petition to the ground. He even said that if the petition had not been jointly signed, he would have sentenced the person to submit the petition to 50 strikes. With such wanton tyranny, the officials were already exhausted from the assassination of the late emperor, and now they were unable to control their new ruler. That was until Yu Fu spoke up, and she had done it in front of both military and civil officials. Ji Daogong looked at Jiyu Huijiang, while Jiyu Huijiang and Jiyu Shubai exchanged a glance. They were all worried that Ning Chengji would do something bad to Yu Fu. Ha ha ha. The sound of laughter broke the silence, as Ning Chengji waved his hand. Yu Fu is right. Let's get rid of the performances. Tell the people outside to stop setting off the fireworks. Saying this, he lifted his wine kettle. Suddenly realizing something, he poured the wine out behind himself. Come, swap out the wine in the hall for tea. We shall offer a toast of tea to Princess Zhenjiang. He did not get angry. Instead, he did as Yu Fu suggested. The way in which the officials looked at Yu Fu instantly changed. Could it really be as the rumors said, and His Majesty truly wanted to take Princess Zhenjiang as his empress, and that was why he listened to everything that she said? In truth, if there was such a wise empress to assist and guide His Majesty, Eastern Ling's situation in court might be salvageable. Unfortunately, Ji Daogong and Senior Cabinet Minister Chen looked toward Jiyu Shubai at the same time. At the bottom of their eyes, there was an emotion that was hard to describe. This princess had been engaged to the heir to Marquis Gu's manor, and the two were in love. After His Majesty ascended the throne, he had made many moves to suppress Marquis Gu's manor. If he then took this subject's wife, would it not be criticized by everyone? Senior Cabinet Minister Chen let out a long sigh. He had never felt as much regret over something that he had done as he did today. But even if he regretted it now, if he had allowed the eldest prince to muddle his way to the throne, would the result have been any better than it was now? The officials stared blankly, as the cups of wine in front of them were swapped out for tea. Nobody dared to voice any objections. Ning Chengji raised his cup and offered it to Yu Fu, and Yu Fu expressionlessly drank it. Ning Chengji said, "In order to express our condolences to the late emperor, there shall be no performances today. However, there are quite a few young misses from prominent families that have come in today. When the late emperor was still alive, he loved allowing the young misses to perform. For today, let's act as if the late emperor is still here, and let us use that to express our grief for his passing. How does that sound?" A few of the young misses present revealed looks of joy. Initially, they thought that after Yu Fu had spoken, there would be no chance for them to display the talents that they had worked so hard on. They did not think that this could happen. By using the late emperor's love for entertainment in banquets as a reason, it became impossible to object. Ning Chengji then continued, "Since we are expressing our condolences to the late emperor, all of the unmarried young misses that have come today must perform. We will reward you with glory." Saying this, he clapped his hands, and 4 to 5 eunuchs carried a tall seat in. It had the same golden base as the imperial throne, and the only difference was that the base of this throne had a phoenix engraved on it. It was the empress seat. A discussion broke out among the officials, and looks of desire were visible in the eyes of the young misses. They were eager to put forth their full effort in the upcoming performances. Ning Chengji smiled and said, "It has been 2 months since we were enthroned, yet the empress seat has remained vacant. While the late emperor was still alive, the late empress passed away early from illness, Thus it has been decades since the Empress seat has been brought out. Today, we will use this as the reward, and one of the young misses will be allowed to sit in the throne. Once this was said, not to mention the young misses, even the officials became excited. The Empress seat could not be filled so casually. It was related to the country's foundation. The officials with daughters in the hall were filled with expectation, while Ji Daogong and the other senior ministers were filled with apprehension. Jiyu Shubai looked toward Yu Fu, and the latter looked back at him and nodded. There was a hint of a smile in her bright eyes, as she tried to reassure him. Regardless of why Ning Chengji brought out the Empress seat today, she would not want it. Your Majesty, would this consort be permitted to participate? A member of the imperial harem below stood up. Yu Fu recognized her. It was one of Ning Chengji's consorts from before he had ascended the throne. After Ning Chengji ascended, the Empress seat remained vacant, and she fully believed that there was some hope. She did not think that he would just confer her the title of Imperial Consort Li and just leave things at that. Naturally, Imperial Consort Li could not accept this. Ning Chengji glanced at her. You are an imperial consort and not some unmarried young girl. Why are you trying to join in on the excitement? Imperial consort Li puffed up her cheeks and pouted, but it was all pointless. When she sat down, she angrily looked at Yu Fu. What nonsense about using the Empress seat as a reward, and what nonsense about selecting one of the young misses present to be the Empress. Ning Chengji might be able to deceive others, but he could not deceive her. She knew that the only one he wanted to make Empress was Yu Fu. Ning Chengji looked down below. He was not too familiar with the officials' daughters. In previous banquets, things like the order in which the young misses performed were managed by Imperial Consort Xian. Imperial Consort Xian had passed away long ago, and Imperial Consort Li was the only member of his inner palace that had some name recognition. The other concubines from the second prince's manor did not have particularly high standings. As a result, he said to Imperial Consort Li, "Forget it, we will give you some glory. Come and pick the order in which they shall perform." Imperial Consort Li thought quickly and looked down at the various young misses. Suddenly seeing someone whom she had not seen in a long time, she immediately came up with an idea. She pointed at one person, the gems on her golden fingernail protector glimmering. "Let's have young Miss Liu go first." A slender girl stood up from the crowd. Wearing a dazzling dress made of Hangzhou silk embroidered with pomegranate flowers, it was Liu Yuyi, the daughter of Liu Zhen, a senior minister in the Board of Civil Office. Yu Fu found her to look familiar and suddenly remembered that she was the one who had previously been rude to her at another palace banquet. After that, Liu Yuyi had been restricted from entering the palace by the late emperor. How did she get into the palace today? Yin Shuo, who had been quietly sitting below her, suddenly leaned over. After His Majesty ascended the throne, he granted amnesty to many. As a senior minister of the Board of Civil Office, His Majesty naturally pardoned something like his darling daughter not being allowed to enter the palace. Jiyu Shubai saw him lean close to Yu Fu, and his brows slightly furrowed. In the end, he managed to calm himself down. Yu Fu's seat was so far away from Marquis Guzman's seats. It was clear that Ning Chengji did not hope for them to be together. He could not oppose him in public. Fortunately, Yu Fu managed to create some distance between her and Yin Shuo without anyone noticing. Oh, so it was like that, but His Majesty seems to be quite ignorant of these young misses. It looks as if he doesn't recognize any of them. How could he remember to pardon a young miss who could not enter the palace? Prime Minister Yin should be the one responsible for daily matters. You must be the one who reminded His Majesty, right? Yin Shuo was unable to suppress a smile. He felt that Yu Fu's extremely confrontational way of speaking with him was very entertaining. No matter how vicious she was, he could not get angry at her. That's right. As Prime Minister, should I not try to get along with all officials? Whether it was getting along well or winning them over, everyone knew the truth. Yu Fu rolled her eyes at him and did not say anything else. Chapter 354 If You Were Our Empress, Part 2, Liu Yuyi received the honor and was endlessly thankful. Your Majesty, this girl wishes to perform a dance to celebrate Your Majesty. Ning Chengji politely nodded and sized up Liu Yi. He thought to himself that this girl was so old yet had not yet gotten married. Princess Danyang getting married at the age of 16 was already a little late, but this girl was probably around 17 or 18, right? He quietly complained to himself. Why had Imperial Consort Li chosen this sort of girl to be the first to perform? Eunuch Kai leaned down and whispered something into his ear, and he shot an angry look at Imperial Consort Li. That damn Imperial Consort Li, she clearly knows that we like Yu Fu, yet she deliberately chose someone who is Yu Fu's rival to gain glory. He gnashed his teeth at Eunuch Kai, and the latter reassured him, "Your Majesty, calm down." Young Miss Liu did indeed offend the princess, but she could not be said to have opposed her. Look at the princess's expression. When has she ever even thought of this person as a rival? Ning Chengji looked toward Yu Fu and saw her carefree watching Liu Rui's dance. From time to time, she would lower her head to take a sip of tea. There was absolutely no sign of any change in her expression. Only now did he relax. He then motioned for Eunuch Kai to lean over. Imperial Consort Li actually dared to act so brazenly. For the next month, don't let her come to our place. We do not wish to see her. Eunuch Kai bowed and accepted the order. When he raised his head, he glanced at Imperial Consort Li with a look of delight. 1 month earlier, Imperial Consort Li wanted to go to the Imperial study. By saying that she was the highest-ranking member of the Inner Palace, nobody dared to stop her. However, Ning Chengji happened to not want to see her. As a result, Imperial Consort Li cussed out Eunuch Kai today. He finally got revenge. Imperial Consort Li, however, did not notice anything. On the contrary, she was cheerfully watching Liu Rui's dance while occasionally observing Yu Fu's expression. Liu Rui's dance was completely unremarkable. The only point worth noting was that her flowing sleeves moved with vigor. Her sleeves' movements were as sharp as swords, which attracted some applause. Hearing the cheers while she danced in the hall, she could not help but feel a little delighted. Thinking back to the previous mid-autumn banquet and the humiliation that she had suffered there, she wanted to get justice. Thinking like this, she flicked her flowing sleeves directly at Yu Fu. The latter raised her eyes to look at her without any intention of dodging. The sleeves did not reach Yu Fu, as the sound of soldiers pulling out blades came from all around. Countless soldiers moved to protect her. When she raised her head, she saw countless bits of white cloth fluttering in the air. They were from Liu Rui's flowing sleeves. Yin Shuo was the one closest to Yu Fu. Upon realizing that something seemed off, he moved to try and protect her. Jiyu Shubai was also paying close attention to Yu Fu. Seeing the grim situation, he chose to throw his cup at the flowing sleeves. Who knew that the leader of the Imperial Guards, Meng Fei, who had been standing next to Ning Chengji, would rush forward. He initially intended to cup the sleeves, but because of the cup that had been thrown getting in the way, it was shattered into small pieces. Liu Yi stupidly stood there. Her flowing sleeves had been cut, and she could no longer continue dancing. The atmosphere became awkward. Yin Shuo retreated to his seat, while Meng Fei returned to Ning Chengji's side. Yu Fu looked up at Liu Yi. She was already in a bad mood tonight. She did not think that Liu Yi would dare to do anything to her after being rude to her back then. Her eyes were utterly merciless. Liu Yi was a little afraid. Remembering that Yu Fu was a princess and no longer a little girl who could be bullied, she looked to Imperial Consort Li for help. Imperial Consort Li thought for a moment, then slowly stood up. You dare to act so discourteously when given honor and nearly hurt the princess. Before she could speak, Ning Chengji stood up and slammed the table, giving her a fright. Guards, take Liu Yi out and give her 50 strikes. Liu Rui's knees wobbled, as she immediately dropped to her knees. Your Majesty, spare me. Your Majesty, spare me. This girl did not do it on purpose. Imperial Consort Li quickly sat back down while nobody was paying attention and acted as if she had not stood up to speak. Liu Zhen hastily stood up from his seat to try and plead for his daughter. Your Majesty, please be lenient. She definitely did not intend to offend the princess. 50 strikes would kill her. I beg your Majesty to be lenient. HMPH. Ning Chengji did not even bother looking at Liu Zhen and simply said to Yu Fu, What does Princess think? Yu Fu was unhappy with Liu Rui's actions, however, she knew just how heavy of punishment this was. If Liu Ruyi was really made to endure that punishment, she really might lose her life. Liu Ruyi was guilty, but she should not die for that. She stood up and said, "Forget it, I indeed was not injured. Your Majesty, please spare her." Ning Chengji was very displeased upon hearing this. Though you were not hurt, it is indeed a fact that she acted discourteously when given an honor. Hear our decree, punish her with a length of white silk. Liu Ruyi passed out in fear, while Liu Zhen felt completely drained. There was a chance of surviving 50 strikes, however, there was no such possibility. Yu Fu did not think that her pleas would have an adverse effect. All of the officials looked at Ning Chengji with looks of fear and disappointment. How could their ruler be this sort of person? How could he be willing to have one of his subjects' daughters sentenced to death over such a trivial matter? Would this not chill the hearts of all officials? The dazzling banquet hall lost its warmth and became chilly. Amidst the silence, only Liu Zhen's begging and kowtowing could be heard. Thunk, thunk. Yu Fu revealed a difficult expression. Although young Miss Liu acted discourteously when given an honor, it was a result of a disagreement with me. I hope that your Majesty will spare young Miss Liu on my account. Ning Chengji had been waiting for this moment. We also wish to do something on your account. Unfortunately, you are just a princess. If you were our empress, we would surely be reluctant to oppose your wishes. Chapter 355 You Are the Cruel One, Part 3. There was an uproar among the crowd, as Ning Chengji finally spoke his true feelings. Jiyu Shubai stood up to leave his seat but was quietly pulled back by Jiyu Huijiang. Sit down. He looked at Jiyu Huijiang in disbelief. He did not understand what he was feeling when he gave that order, nor did he know what he was feeling when facing His Majesty, who was basically asking for her hand in marriage. Since ancient times, marriage had been decided by the parents and matchmakers. The person present with the greatest right to decide this was Jiyu Huijiang, thus everyone turned to look at him. Just as Jiyu Huijiang was about to stand up, he suddenly saw a figure next to him stand up. It was Ji Daogong. It was Ji Daogong, the one who never spoke up for his own selfish desires. He very rarely took the initiative to voice his opinion. The previous time, it had been after the late emperor was assassinated, and he had taken control of the situation. This was just the second time. He ran his fingers through his beard and said with a smile, "Since today is New Year's Eve, could it be that your Majesty drank too much?" The late emperor personally sanctioned the engagement between Princess Jinjiang and Marquis Guzer. At that time, the deity of medicine was also present. Princess Zhenjing is already engaged, so how could she become empress? The corner of Yin Shuo's mouth twitched, and he took a sip of tea while feigning ignorance to what was happening around him. Even Ji Daogong had spoken up. Who knew if His Majesty would give him face? Ning Chengji was shocked by Ji Daogong's unusual behavior, but he refused to relent. Already engaged does not mean already married. More importantly, after the late emperor engaged them, they did not exchange gifts. How can they be considered engaged? Your Majesty, with an imperial decree, there is no need to go through the usual customs of exchanging. We don't care. Ning Chengji waved his broad sleeves, and a fierce expression appeared on his face. If we say it doesn't count, it doesn't count. Ji Daogong, are you opposing this decree? Ji Daogong was stunned, and Jiyu Huijiang immediately stood up. Your Majesty must not be so unreasonable. Lord Ji is a senior official who has served in 3 different courts. Not even the late emperor dared to address him by his given name. How can your Majesty act like this? Ning Chengji coldly snorted and did not give Jiyu Huijiang any face. Based on what Marquis Jiyu is saying, because we ascended the throne at a young age, and most of the officials in court are our seniors, we must be respectful to all of them. Or do you hope that we will show respect to you like when we were a prince? This subject does not dare. Jiyu Huijiang cupped his hands and bowed. Ning Chengji did not react, as a contemptuous smile appeared on his face. He refused to accept Jiyu Huijiang's plea. Could it be that he would only accept it if Jiyu Huijiang kneeled? Jiyu Huijiang stepped forward from his seat, and Yu Fu strode over, stopping Jiyu Huijiang, who was about to kneel. She quietly said, "Head General, you must not. Not even the late emperor had you perform such a grand salute." "How can you," Jiyu Huijiang said, "if kneeling will allow you and Shubai to have a good outcome, as a father, why should I not do it?" "Of course, you can't." Yu Fu turned around and walked back up, speaking in a clear voice, "Who said that the heir and I didn't exchange gifts?" She walked toward Jiyu Shubai and removed a pouch from her hip. She was thankful that she had brought this with her, as it would see use in this situation. Opening the pouch, there were 2 pieces of jade inside. Looking carefully, they were multicolored gems. One person wildly exclaimed, "Isn't that the multicolored gem that heralds victory and is found on the border with Western Kuan?" "That's right." Back then, Princess Xinjiang gifted a small piece to the late emperor, and the late emperor loved it dearly. The multicolored gems are so hard to find, so it's hard to believe that there are 2 pieces of such a large size. Yu Fu said, "The multicolored gem that I gifted the late emperor was found by the head general in Zhu Mountain. The 2 pieces of jade that I currently have were found on Zhu Mountain after I rushed to the border to treat the poisoning that they had suffered from. Not only does it symbolize victory, but it also symbolizes the soul of the Jiyu family's army." This was the gift exchanged between him and me. She placed 1 piece in Jiyu Shubai's hand. The piece of jade carried some of the warmth from her palm and warmed his heart. He looked down at it carefully. The multicolored jadestone that they had found back then was the size of a chicken egg, but these 2 stones were much smaller. He could not help but quietly say, "You actually cut the multicolored gem like this. Where is the rest?" Yu Fu whispered, "There are another 6 pieces. 1 piece was given to head general and each of the elder brothers. The multicolored gem symbolizes victory, so no matter which one of you goes onto the battlefield, you will surely return home safely." It turned out that every member of the family had one, yet Yu Fu had presented it as an engagement gift, and this actually managed to stump Ning Chengji. She actually exchanged engagement gifts with another man in front of him? The 2 were speaking as if there was nobody else present. It looked as if Ning Chengji's eyes were about to spew flames. He wanted to have Jiyu Shubai killed in the same way as Liu Ruyi. As long as Jiyu Shubai died, Yu Fu's engagement would be annulled. It was at this moment that Yin Shuo gave him a look. Jiyu Shubai was not Liu Ruyi and could not be killed. At the very least, he could not be killed right now. Jiyu Huijiang had given up a portion of his army, but the Jiyu family's army was still present. Nobody in Eastern Ling was capable of standing up against the strongest army. Ning Chengji was the new ruler, and his rule was not yet stable. If he wanted to have the young general of the Jiyu family's army killed, it would surely cause them to revolt. He could not take this risk. He angrily sat down. "Fine, since that's the case, have Liu Ruyi dragged out and decapitated." From 50 strikes to white silk to decapitation, Ning Chengji's anger continued to escalate. Unfortunately for the unconscious Liu Ruyi, she had absorbed all of his anger. How could Yu Fu not know that Liu Ruyi was suffering because of her and Jiyu Shubai? "Your Majesty," she said, "Liu Rui's guilt is not worthy of death. Is your Majesty truly unwilling to forgive her?" Ning Chengji's gaze landed squarely on her. "We already said it. As long as you are willing to become our empress, we would surely give face to our empress and not kill Liu Ruyi." Jiyu Shubai's pupils slightly contracted, as he clenched the multicolored gem in his hand. Yu Fu was kind-hearted. Though she was an immortal practitioner of poison, she had the heart of a doctor. She would not be willing to watch an innocent person die on her behalf. To save Liu Ruyi, she had to become empress. If she did not become empress, Liu Ruyi would die. Everyone's gaze was focused on Yu Fu, as they waited to see what she would choose. For others, the position of empress was lofty and unattainable, but this was clearly not the case for her. Would she agree to Ning Chengji's condition to save one person's life? Yu Fu suddenly smiled. Her charming dimples were so sweet that they were moving. She stood in the middle of the hall in her plain dress. To her side stood a man more handsome than Pan Yu, yet even that was suppressed by the beauty of her smile. The entire hall was filled with splendor and magnificence, yet only she shone as bright as the moonlight. Her cherry-red lips parted, then just let her die. It was such a cruel sentence, yet Yin Shuo nearly spat out his tea from laughing. Ning Chengji shot a displeased glance at him. Yin Shuo wiped the corners of his mouth and smiled apologetically. Liu Zhen, who was kneeling on the ground, looked at Yu Fu in disbelief. With a trembling hand, he pointed at her. "Princess, how can you be so cruel? Though my daughter has offended you, this is still a life. You could occupy the supremely noble seat of the Empress and save my daughter's life at the same time. Why would you not take it?" Seeing Yu Fu ignore him, he decided to start kowtowing toward Yu Fu. "Princess, this subject begs you. This subject is begging you. This subject begs you to save my daughter's life." Thunk, 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 the sound reverberated in the hall, and blood spilled forth, dyeing Yu Fu's embroidered shoes red. Meng Fei frowned and was about to move forward to stop him, but Eunuch Kai stopped him. "Commander, don't go. His Majesty has not permitted you to go." Meng Fei opened his mouth in shock. He only understood Eunuch Kai's intention after a while, and he slowly returned to his original spot. Blood being spilled in the Imperial Palace on New Year's Eve was an ill omen. The officials frowned, as some began trying to persuade Yu Fu. "Princess, just agree to His Majesty's idea. Princess is capable and virtuous, and you have a noble status. Only you are worthy of advising His Majesty." "That's right, Princess, just agree with His Majesty. Only with you becoming Empress can we feel at ease." Capable, virtuous, and possessing noble status, all of it was bullshit. Jiyu Shubai coldly watched from the side. The officials that were pleading with Yu Fu all looked away in shame when he looked at them. Pleading with his fiancée to marry another man in front of him, these officials sure were good. They sure were two-faced. He knew deep down that these people were either trying to curry favor with Ning Chengji or understood Yu Fu's personality and hoped that she would be able to make Ning Chengji a virtuous ruler. Liu Zhen continued to kowtow without any sign of stopping. Yu Fu finally bent down, and everyone held their breaths. Leaning over, she pulled a handkerchief from her sleeve and wiped the blood from her shoe. Liu Zhen raised his head in a daze. Yu Fu faced his blooded forehead and did not feel any guilt. "Lord Liu, you're kowtowing to the wrong person. The one who wants to kill young Miss Liu is His Majesty. How is this related to me?" Liu Zhen, But as long as I agree to His Majesty's conditions, young Miss Liu would be spared. Young Miss Liu bullied me back then, so why should I give up on a life of happiness for that sort of person? I have pleaded to His Majesty for her life, and I have done my best. Why should I sacrifice my happiness for her?" Liu Zhen, How? How can you be so cruel and not save someone when you can? The cruel one is you, Lord Liu." Yu Fu raised her head and looked at him with contempt from the corner of her eyes. "Back when young Miss Liu was sentenced to not be allowed into the palace, I did not see you beg to such a degree. Today, Lord Liu kowtowed to the point of bloodying your forehead. Was it for the sake of saving young Miss Liu's life or for the sake of currying favor with His Majesty?" Chapter 356 Perform a Spectral Show, Part 1. The New Year's Eve banquet dispersed in a somber atmosphere. In the end, Liu Ruyi was executed. She was still unconscious when the Imperial Guards dragged her out. Who knew if she had woken up when the blade was placed on her neck? If she had not woken up, she could be considered fortunate. Yu Fu sat in the carriage on the trip back to the manor, and her body suddenly started to tremble. "Don't be scared. I'm here." Jiyu Shubai comfortingly sat next to her, and she quietly muttered, "I'm not scared. I'm just a little cold." She was clearly afraid, yet she insisted on pretending that she was not afraid. Not to mention Yu Fu, but how many of the officials present in the hall were not afraid? Back when they had chosen the second prince to ascend the throne, who could have known that the one sitting on the golden throne would be so ruthless and arrogant? The New Year's Eve banquet was bloody, and there was a bit of fear in everyone's hearts. However, he did not expose her. He just pulled her into his embrace. "It's windy tonight. It won't be cold once we get back to the manor. Does this make it a little better?" Yu Fu nestled into his embrace and fiddled with the multicolored gem. Eldest brother, do you think that by giving everyone a multicolored gem, they will be able to triumph anywhere they go? That should be the case. Jiyu Shubai did not believe in superstitions. More importantly, it was just a stone. If having one would lead to victory, what would the killing carried out by the soldiers on the battlefield be considered? But he could not bring himself to say it directly and just gave a vague answer. Yu Fu placed the gems back into the pouch. The Jiyu family's army is undefeatable on the battlefield, but will we be able to defend against the winds surrounding the palace? Head General, let us go in. A loud banging came from the gates to Marquis Gu's manor, as the soldiers did their best to stop the people outside. They were feeling very troubled. Chi Ju immediately rushed over. What's going on? Only after taking a look did he find out why the soldiers were feeling troubled. The ones who had come were none other than Laro Jin, Yang Huasha, and the other military officers. Why have the officers come? It's the New Year's Eve banquet tonight. What banquet? We already know about what happened in the palace. Steward Chi, quickly bring us to see the head general. Chi Ju hesitated for a moment before allowing them in trance. Head general has not gone to sleep yet. Officers, please come in. The group rushed forward. Arriving at the main hall, they found the candles illuminated brightly. Jiyu Huijiang and a few of the young sirs were sitting in the hall and waiting for the new year to arrive. They were all sitting in silence. Greetings, Head General. After saluting in unison, Laro Jin glanced around the hall but did not see Yu Fu. Oh. Head General, where is young Miss Yu Fu? Everyone looked around. Sure enough, they did not see Yu Fu. For a while, they were a little shocked. Jiyu Shubai quickly said, there's no need to feel anxious. Yu Fu heard that you have come, thus she went to the kitchen to order for some food and wine to be prepared. She will be back soon. Laro Jin let out a long sigh. That scared me to death. I thought that she, what did you think? Laro Jin glanced at Yang Huasha, and the latter gritted his teeth and said, we heard about what happened in the palace. His Majesty is too unreasonable. Young General and Yu Fu's engagement was decided by the late Emperor. How could His Majesty dare to act in this way? Does he have any sense of filial piety as a son or kindness as a ruler? Laro Jin said, that's right. Head General, ever since His Majesty ascended the throne, our Jiyu family's army has been suppressed again and again. Now, Prime Minister Yin wants to extend his reach and make changes to our Jiyu family's army. What a joke. With Head General's leadership, is there any need for a civil official to make changes? There was discussion abound, and the discussion only died down when Yu Fu entered the hall. Yarolan and the others were behind her with the newly cooked dishes and wine, and they placed them on the table in the hall. Since everyone rushed here in the middle of the night, you must not have been able to eat a good meal. Have some warm wine to warm up. Laro Jin let out a sigh. In my life, I haven't done anything great. The most meaningful thing that I did, of course, would be bringing young Miss back from the entrance to Immortals Valley back then. We didn't make a mistake. You were even willing to decline the position of Empress. I, Laro Jin, admire young Miss. He cupped his hands in a salute, and the other officers expressed similar sentiments. This made Yu Fu feel a little embarrassed. Yu Fu supported them. It isn't anything worthy of admiration. I have never cared about these titles. Yarolan poured wine while looking toward Yu Fu. She had a noble status. The position of Eastern Ling's Empress was a treasure to others, but it was completely worthless to her. Laro Jin did not know about Yu Fu's identity, and his admiration for Yu Fu was absolute. As he continued, young Miss doesn't want to be Empress and can't bear His Majesty's fascination. Head General, tell us. Do you think our idea can work? Of course not. Jiyu Huijiang looked up at everyone and motioned for them to sit down. When everyone was seated, he said, there are 200,000 troops in the Jiyu family army, and His Majesty is already being deceived by traitors, so there is already some jealousy present. If you guys go into the palace, His Majesty will feel that he is being threatened and would just envy us even more. If we can't go into the palace to see His Majesty, what should we do? Laro Jin scratched his head, and Yang Huasha said, if Head General has a good idea, please tell us. We will definitely do everything that we can to help. Is our Gu family's army's young madam someone that His Majesty can snatch away just because he wants to? Absolutely not. Gu Juji said, right now, the one I'm worried about is not Yu Fu. It's father. His Majesty did not forcibly hand down a decree to confer that title to Yu Fu tonight because he is still afraid of the might of the Gu family's army. He is afraid of father's influence in court. If His Majesty does not give up on this, his only way forward would be to reduce father's prestige and the strength of the Gu family's army. I fear that His Majesty will make his move against father very shortly. He would dare. Laro Jin slammed the table and stood up, his eyes opened wide. If not for our head general, would he have been able to ascend the throne? He would have died in the imperial family's prison long ago. That ungrateful and despicable person, what qualifications does he have to be emperor? Shush, have you gone crazy? Yang Huisha immediately stood up and covered his mouth. Fortunately, the servants in Marquis Gu's manor were loyal. Even if Chi Ju and the other servants in the courtyard heard it, they would not spread it. He sternly pointed at Laro Jin. Was that sort of thing also just a joke? If you don't want to be alive, that's fine, but don't implicate head general, the young sirs, and the young miss. You need to remember that regardless of whether or not he has the qualifications, he is already the emperor. He is right, Jiu Shubai said. That person in the imperial palace is indeed lacking in qualifications to be emperor. Shubai. Jiu Huijiang spoke in a stern tone and pointed at Jiu Shubai. His Majesty has surely been influenced by traitors. This is not in his nature. Don't worry, I will personally go into the palace tomorrow to see His Majesty. I will surely be able to convince him to change his mind. Laro Jin, Yang Huisha, and the others hastily said, Head General, will you be going alone? How can that be? That's right. His Majesty was infuriated tonight. So wouldn't it be bad for Head General if His Majesty was unable to let go of this matter? Jiu Shubai did not speak again. Yin Shuo might have influenced Ning Chengji when it came to other things, for example, the suppression of Marquis Gu's manor. But when it came to Yu Fu, this was absolutely impossible. If Ning Chengji had made up his mind, it would be very hard for Jiu Huijiang to persuade him. He suddenly came up with an idea: have second brother go into the palace tomorrow with father. That would be a good way to take care of him. I will go to the Prime Minister's manor tomorrow. Yin Shuo might have some thoughts on this matter. Everyone in Marquis Gu's manor understood what he meant, and they fell silent for some time. Yu Fu had a bad feeling about this. Eldest brother, I will go with you tomorrow. While I'm at it, I can go and see Jiao. Jiu Huijiang felt uncertain. Then we shall go with that. You guys should all go home. For the time being, this matter does not require you guys. Remember not to act rashly. Laro Jin and the others could do nothing but worry. They were unable to do anything in such an important matter, so it was easy to understand just how miserable they felt. But Jiu Huijiang was correct. If they went into the palace to see Ning Chengji, it would only give off a negative impression, and that would only make things worse. The group had no choice but to bid farewell. Right before leaving, Laro Jin specifically pulled Chi Ju to the side. If Head General plans something big, you must send someone to tell me. We all want to protect Head General and the others. You are like us, do you understand? Chi Ju gave him a troubled look but felt that there was nothing wrong with his statement. Officer Jin, don't worry. If something really does happen, I will be sure to send someone to inform you. After everyone left, Marquis Gu's manor returned to being as silent as it had been before, with only the flickering candles illuminating the long halls. Yu Fu blankly watched the lights flicker. Nobody in the hall spoke. Even the usually lively Jiu Xiong and Jiu Yi were silent. There was absolutely no festive atmosphere. She suddenly stood up with a smile. We can't just sit around all night while waiting for the new year, right? That would be too boring. Fifth brother, sixth brother, how about we perform a mystical show for everyone? Chapter 357 Emperor Xiaozong, Shenyuan Yunqi, Part 2. The so-called mystical show had not been heard of in Eastern Ling before. The first time that they had heard about it was when Yu Fu brought it up. Only after seeing her performance did they come to understand why it was called a spectral show. The show was intriguing and particularly mysterious. Ji Yu Seong and Ji Yu Yi immediately became interested. Very well, but you only taught us 2 things. You taught us how to do string figures and how to make handkerchiefs disappear, but eldest brother saw through those long ago. Do you have anything more impressive?
I do.
Yu Fu led the 2 outside to talk about it. Seeing the 3 act so sneakily like little mice, he could not help but smile. Up until a moment ago, the room had been completely silent. Now, everyone had become intrigued, as they waited to see Yu Fu's more impressive show. The 3 quickly returned with Ji Yu Seong and Ji Yu Yi carrying a large chest. Placing it in the middle of the hall, they opened it up and revealed that it was completely empty. Yu Fu smiled and said, "This technique is particularly amazing. Do you all see this empty chest? 6th brother will lie down inside, and I will make 6th brother disappear." Ji Yu Yi let out a sigh and walked over to the large chest. He lay down inside the chest, and Ji Yu Seong lowered the lid. Everyone subconsciously looked at the chest. It was a very normal chest, and it did not look like it had been altered. Could she really make the person inside the chest disappear? Yu Fu pulled out some red cloth and covered the chest. A little nervously, she gave the chest a kick. 6th brother, are you doing all right inside the chest? In the past, she had only performed small tricks involving string manipulation. This was her first time making a person disappear from inside a chest, thus she was a little nervous. Ji Yu Wenqing could not help but smile. Covering his mouth, he did his best to suppress his laughter to avoid hurting Yu Fu's confidence. Ji Yu Yi's muffled voice came from inside the chest, "I'm fine. It's just too cramped. Little Yu Fu, move a little faster." "Don't worry." Yu Fu adjusted the red cloth on top of the chest and glanced at everyone's expressions. They were all watching closely and listening attentively for any movements. To try and pull off any tricks in front of them was truly difficult. Yu Fu chanted a spell at the red cloth and then removed it. Ji Yu Seong then opened the lid to the chest. The person inside had disappeared. Ji Yu Wenqing stepped forward and felt around inside the chest. He actually disappeared. How exactly did you do this, and where did 6th brother go? No matter how he felt around, the chest in front of him was empty. Ji Yu Juji was unable to sit still, stepping forward and inspecting the chest. The chest was sealed on all 4 sides, so it would have been impossible for someone to have escaped under their watchful eyes. Strange, where did Ji Yu Yi go? It's no wonder it's called a mystical show. It really is mysterious, but where's the mystical element? Yu Fu said, "It's a name from the great Zhou dynasty that existed 200 years ago when the land had not yet been divided in 3. It is said that under Empress Shengwen of Renzong's court, it was initially called magic. Emperor Renzong thought that the word magic was a little too terrifying and did not fit a technique that was used to entertain people, thus its name was changed to illusionary show. Who knew that it would become known as a mystical show after being spread around through word of mouth? Emperor Renzong and Empress Shengwen? Ji Yu Shubai stood up and walked around the chest, so it was a technique that originates from the imperial family. Emperor Renzong abdicated at a young age, while Empress Shengwen was a strange woman who was famous the world over. It's just a pity that after the throne was handed down to Empress Xiaozong, Shenyuan Yunqi, Empress Xiaozong divided the world in 3 and gave Eastern Ling and Western Kuan to his younger brothers. Ji Yu Hanmo said, saying it like this, why did mystical shows not continue to exist in Eastern Ling? Strictly speaking, it's because Eastern Ling and Western Kuan did not inherit the Zhou dynasty's will. Ji Yu Huijiang, who had remained silent this entire time, said, after the world was divided in 3, there was internal strife in the 3rd generation after the formations of Eastern Ling and Western Kuan. That resulted in new rulers. Only Northern Li continues to carry on that lineage with its territory remaining peaceful and without conflict. Then if this is the case, only Northern Li has inherited the will of the Zhou dynasty. But Northern Li's imperial family's surname is Ji and not Shenyuan? Ji Yu Huijiang was also uncertain about this point. Northern Li was very closed off from its 2 southern neighbors. Whether there had been a change of courts or dynasties, he was completely in the dark. With the topic shifting from mystical arts to Northern Li, Yu Fu hastily said, "Head General, are you guys unable to guess where I moved him?" The group returned to their senses and started looking around. Only Jiyu Shubai revealed a bit of a smile. Jiyu Wenqing said, "Eldest brother, have you noticed something? Quickly tell us." Yu Fu also looked at him, and Jiyu Shubai face-palmed, "I didn't notice anything, but I can also put on a mystical show. I can have sixth brother reappear inside the chest. Do you guys believe it or not?" Saying this, he closed the lid on the chest. Lifting the entire chest, he flipped it over and put it back down, and Jiyu Yi's desperate cries immediately came from inside the chest, "Eldest brother, spare me." Strange, he really brought Jiyu Yi back. Jiyu Xiong hastily opened the chest, and Jiyu Yi staggered out of the chest in a sorry state. "Eldest brother, you're too cruel. It was already extremely cramped inside, yet you still flipped me over. I nearly threw up the New Year's Eve meal. Eldest brother, how exactly did you bring sixth brother back?" Jiyu Wenqing inspected the chest once more. No matter how he looked, he could not find any clues. Could it be that Jiyu Shubai was truly able to learn Yu Fu's mystical technique just by seeing it once? Yu Fu and Jiyu Shubai exchanged a look and tacitly smiled. Chapter 358. She is slowly changing. The next day was the first day of the new year. Marquis Gu's manor sent out a request for a visit first thing in the morning, and a response quickly came from the Prime Minister's manor. Jiyu Shubai and Yu Fu would go to the Prime Minister's manor, while Jiyu Huijiang would go into the palace. The two carriages set out together and then went their separate ways. Jiyu Huijiang waited outside the imperial study, and Eunuch Kai slowly came out after he had waited for quite some time. "Ah, Lord Marquis Jiyu, it truly is unfortunate. Today is the day that the imperial family has come to see His Majesty. His Majesty is currently speaking with the members of the imperial family inside. Lord Marquis Jiyu is invited to wait outside." Jiyu Huijiang nodded, "Very well, this Marquis will wait here." Eunuch Kai examined his expression and then said, "If this servant may ask Lord Marquis, what did you come to see His Majesty for? This servant might be able to help with your matter. Without giving it my best effort, who knows if it's impossible or not?" Jiyu Huijiang glanced at him and revealed a smile. If Eunuch Kai is willing to help this Marquis is naturally delighted. To be completely honest, it is about what happened during the banquet last night. When Eunuch Kai heard that it was about the banquet that had happened last night, he immediately smiled fawningly. "Has Lord Marquis finally thought things through? Come on, you blind fools, Lord Marquis is waiting here, yet you didn't even think of bringing him a chair." The latter half was directed at the palace servants below, and someone immediately rushed forward with an armchair. Jiyu Huijiang just looked at it but did not sit down. Eunuch Kai became more and more respectful. Lord Marquis has finally thought it through. This servant will finally be able to let out a sigh of relief. You have no idea how much His Majesty likes Princess Xinjiang. She was offered the position of Empress, yet she refused it in front of him. His Majesty was absolutely furious last night. If he knew that you came here to talk about this today, how could he be in the mood to talk to the other members of the imperial family? Lord Marquis, please sit for now. This servant will go in and inform His Majesty right now. Jiyu Huijiang said. Eunuch Kai, please wait a moment. Huh. Eunuch Kai was in the middle of rejoicing and was about to go inside to report to Ning Chengji. Having been stopped, he was stunned. Jiyu Huijiang looked at him but did not say a word. The look in his eyes told him that his guess was incorrect. Eunuch Kai was the head of the palace's personnel, and he looked at him in disbelief. Was Lord Marquis Jiyu, the one who controlled a large number of troops and had enjoyed a period of great popularity, daring to oppose His Majesty? As long as he was willing to relent, he would be the one who stood above all but one. He would be even more important than Prime Minister Yin, who was only a brother-in-law. From that moment on, he would no longer need to fear being suppressed. How could he be so unwilling to relent? Eunuch Kai helplessly looked at him and angrily said, "Since Lord Marquis doesn't want to sit, take the chair away. Otherwise, it will cause the members of the imperial family to talk about it. After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and returned to the imperial study. The eunuch below looked at each other, and one approached Jiyu Huaijiang and quietly said, "Lord Marquis, we're truly sorry. As servants, we have no choice but to listen to orders." Jiyu Huaijiang quietly said, "It can't be helped." He knew that he was coming here to anger the emperor, not please him. From the very beginning, he did not plan on being treated with kindness here. Sure enough, after the eunuchs took the chair away, the members of the imperial family New Year's visit continued for a long time. A New Year's greeting would usually last less than an hour, but Jiyu Huaijiang was left waiting outside for 2 hours without any sign of movement from inside. He did not move an inch and was completely alert, while his expression showed his indifference toward how he was being treated. The eunuchs stood at the end of the hall and mentally gave him a thumbs up. They thought to themselves that someone who had many military accomplishments was truly exceptional. They had an aura of calm certainty to them. After another quarter of an hour passed, the sound of footsteps could faintly be heard coming from inside, as the members of the imperial family started walking out with their own thoughts on their minds. Seeing Jiyu Huaijiang waiting outside, they came to a sudden realization. It was no wonder His Majesty spoke so much today. It was clear that he did not have much to say, yet he insisted on dragging things out and refusing to let them leave. It turned out that he had done it deliberately to trouble Lord Marquis Jiyu. A few of the members of the imperial family had awkward expressions, wanting to go and say a few comforting words to Jiyu Huaijiang but also fearing that it would be heard or seen by the many people outside of the imperial study. They could do nothing but greet him before leaving. Only the old imperial uncle and Ning Tangshu walked over to him. "Lord Marquis Jiyu." "Imperial uncle." The two sides cupped their hands in a greeting, as the imperial uncle said, "Lord Marquis Jiyu came so early. His Majesty is currently in a bad mood. If you have something to say, why not wait until another time to bring it up?" Jiyu Huaijiang was a bit shocked, then said with a smile, "Imperial uncle understands my thoughts and knows why I am here. As a result, you know that this matter will need to be addressed sooner or later, and His Majesty's anger will come sooner or later." The imperial uncle sighed, "Though this old one is a member of the imperial family, and though I am of an older generation, I have no influence. His Majesty respectfully calls me Lord Imperial Uncle, and if he did not respect me, he would at worst call this old one an old fool. As for what happened last night, this old one truly wanted to do something but was powerless." Ning Tangshu frowned and took a step forward to help support him. Eunuch Kai suddenly stepped out from the study. "Lord Marquis Jiyu, His Majesty has summoned you inside." "This way." Jiyu Huaijiang cupped his hands to the two and followed Eunuch Kai into the imperial study. The elderly imperial uncle watched his parting figure and let out a long sigh. "Father," Ning Tangshu tried to console him, but the words that were on his lips failed to come out, thus he simply decided to give up on saying them. He and his father were the same, disliking how Ning Chengji was trying to use the Empress seat to steal Yufu. They also resented how Jiyu Huaijiang was being repressed despite his loyalty. However, they were just ordinary members of the imperial family without much influence and could not do anything. "Father, let's go home first." Marquis Gu's manor's carriage stopped outside of the Prime Minister's manor. Yin Shuor wore a set of dark red robes and personally waited outside for Yu Fu and Jiyu Shubai. He seemed to be in a great mood. "You two are guests. This is your first time coming to the Prime Minister's manor, but your presence makes my Prime Minister's manor shine." Jiyu Shubai faintly smiled. "For Lord Prime Minister to have come out to receive us, Prime Minister has been too kind." Yin Shuor carefully picked his words and replied, "Not at all, not to mention eldest young sir's position as the heir nor your position as the young general of the Jiyu family's army, but just speaking of Her Highness the Princess, as a subject, it's natural that I come out to receive her." Yu Fu listened to the two go back and forth and impatiently waved her hand. "I did not come to the Prime Minister's manor today to talk about etiquette between subject and ruler. Moreover, I know that Prime Minister Yin has never thought of princesses as rulers. Isn't that right?" Yin Shuor could hear the mocking tone in her words and knew that she was talking about Princess Danyang. Without faltering, he responded, "Princess must be joking. Even between princesses, There are differences. How can the one in my manor be compared with you? Just as this was said, a tall figure quietly separated the two, as Jiyu Shubai stepped between them. To take such liberties with his fiancée in front of him, Yin Shuo was a bright one. The two men stared at each other, as sparks seemingly flew between them. Yu Fu tugged his sleeve from behind. This was a habit that she had kept from when she was little. At that time, she was too small and could not reach Jiyu Shubai. Now that she was 14 years old, she was tall enough to reach his shoulder. However, she could not change this habit. Yin Shuo saw this intimate action, and his pupils immediately contracted. This one little movement was enough to drive him mad with jealousy, and he was no longer able to maintain his facade of courtesy. Eldest brother, you chat with Prime Minister Yin. As Yu Fu said this, she poked her head out from behind him and looked at Yin Shuo. The Prime Minister's manor should have a female master who can receive female guests, right? A female master. Did she want to see Princess Danyang, Yin Jiaro, or both? Yin Shuo smiled. He was not worried about the two of them being able to cause any waves. Naturally, I will immediately have someone bring Princess to the eastern courtyard. Eldest young sir, come with me. The two went in different directions. One went east and one went west. When they parted ways, they shared a tacit look and felt reassured. Yin Shuo walked in front of Jiyu Shubai and led the way. His hands were balled up into fists inside his large sleeves. This was the first time that Yu Fu had come to the Prime Minister's manor. Her impression of Yin Shuo and Yin Yang was that they both had profound schemes and ulterior motives. The Prime Minister's manor that she had imagined was frighteningly dark and gloomy. She did not think that she would really come here. Looking at it now, it was indeed refined with exquisite pavilions. She had heard that the Yin family was a family that had been a scholarly family for generations. Compared to Marquis Gu's manor, which had a military background, the Prime Minister's manor was a bit less grand but had a bit more elegance. Before arriving at the eastern courtyard, a familiar figure came over to receive her. Yu Fu. Yin Jiaro was standing on the path and had been waiting for some time. Peia was the only one standing behind her. Seeing Yu Fu, she happily came forward. Jiao. Yu Fu had many questions to ask her but found it hard to speak in front of the servants of the Prime Minister's manor. Yin Jiaro understood and said to the servant, "You can go. Allow me to take care of Princess." The servant hesitantly said, "That." But eldest young sir told this servant to bring Princess Jinjiang to see Princess Danyang. Yin Jiaro fiercely said, "Wasn't eldest sister-in-law unfit to see guests? As the only young miss in the manor, could it be that I am unable to take care of guests for her?" The servant was frightened and hastily retreated. After he left, Yin Jiaro was like a cat that had escaped danger, slowly putting away her claws. Yu Fu could not help but laugh. "You gave me a fright. When did you become so mighty?" Yin Jiaro helplessly said, "It's all just an act. I am doing my best to make myself stronger. It would be great if I could be half as strong as you, then I wouldn't need to worry about being bullied." Yu Fu looked her over and felt that the current Yin Jiaro was very different. She was no longer dressed plainly and in thin clothes. Instead, she wore clothes that showed off her status as the young miss of the Prime Minister's manor. Her face was a little rounder, and she no longer shrank away when others looked at the scar on her forehead. The gauze that covered the scar was still there, but her face was radiant and no longer looked sickly like it did in the past. Yu Fu praised her from the bottom of her heart. "You truly have the demeanor of a female general." "Really?" Yin Jiaro rejoiced but quickly covered her mouth and looked around. "It's inconvenient to speak here. Come and speak in my courtyard. I will take you to see Danyang in a bit. You might have some way of treating her illness." Yu Fu did not refuse, following her to her courtyard. Entering the room, they closed the door, and Yin Jiaro quickly grabbed her hand. "I wasn't able to go into the palace last night, but I heard that His Majesty wanted to appoint you as Empress in front of all of the officials and that you refused. Yuan, because of this, none of the members of Marquis Gu's manor was able to sleep well last night. First thing this morning, Head General went into the palace, and I accompanied eldest brother here to see your eldest brother." "My eldest brother?" Yin Jiaro heard those words and subconsciously felt uneasy. He hates Marquis Guzmana even more than His Majesty. He won't help you. But, if it's concerning you, he might be willing to help. Yu Fu looked around the room. After the previous Prime Minister returned, your eldest brother surely does not dare to trouble you. Princess Danyang is also able to have a happier existence. This is a good thing. Yin Jiaro hastily said, at a time like this, how can you still be worried about us? Right now, your matters are most important. If you don't want to become the Empress, I have an idea. Yu Fu said, what is it? Yin Jiaro said, after word of what happened in the palace last night reached the manor, I was worshipping our ancestors in the ancestral hall with Father. At that time, Father let out a sigh and said, Yu Fu said, go ahead and say it. I won't get mad no matter what the previous Prime Minister said. Only then did Yin Jiaro resolve herself. Father is an extremely old-fashioned person. Back when he wanted me to get close to the second young sir, it was for the sake of learning about your identity. After hearing about what happened in the palace, Father was very angry and said that His Majesty actually wants to appoint a girl with an unclear background as Empress. This absolutely cannot happen. Yu Fu's eyes lit up, as she laughed instead of getting angry. He really said that? Yin Jiaro nodded and looked at Yu Fu in confusion. She was laughing? If others heard this, they might be furious, so how could Yu Fu laugh? Yu Fu cheerfully said, your father is right. I am a girl with an unclear background. Even if the Empress of Eastern Ling does not come from an aristocratic family, she should be innocent and come from a prominent family. As for me, I am just an adopted daughter of Marquis Guzmana. Though I have been accorded the title of princess, I do not have the imperial family's blood. Did the previous Prime Minister say how to stop His Majesty? It turned out that she was rejoicing over this. Yin Jiaro quickly said, though Father does not want you to be Empress, he has already retired from court. That he was able to return to the capital is already thanks to His Majesty's grace, so how could he dare to speak up on this matter? Father returned from the old home looking much older. I fear that even if he had the will, he would not have the power to do anything. Though the previous Prime Minister has retired from court, his prestige is still there. With how much His Majesty favors Prime Minister Yin, he will surely give the previous Prime Minister some face. How about this, Jiao, why don't you bring me to see him? Yin Jiao was extremely shocked and said, you want to see Father? This, she thought to herself that aside from the members of Marquis Guzmana, Yin Yang might be the only one who does not want Yu Fu to become Empress. Marquis Guzmana was currently in a difficult position. If not for this, Jiyu Shubai would not have come to see Yin Shaw. If Yin Yang could be persuaded by Yu Fu, he would be very helpful. She gritted her teeth. When I was in trouble, Marquis Guzmana took me in, and you treated the scar on my forehead. I have remembered that benevolence and will repay it. Very well, I will bring you to see my father. Yu Fu smiled and said, that's great, but don't mention repaying the favor in the future. When third brother broke into the Prime Minister's manor, you were the one who helped him when he was nearly caught. The favors owed between you, Marquis Guzmana, and I are too hard to keep track of, so you don't owe us anything. Yin Jiaro looked at her. She knew that she could never repay the benevolence that Marquis Guzmana had shown her. Yu Fu said this to allow her to feel a little better. The greatest gift that they had given her was telling her the truth about her identity. They allowed her to know that she was not born of a prostitute but was born of a female general from Western Kuan. Her birth mother had been a powerful female general, so why did she have to be submissive and meek? Why could she not be daring and brave like her birth mother? She was slowly changing and becoming a brave and righteous person. Chapter 359 Forgive son for not being able to follow orders. Master, young miss brought princess here saying that she wants to see you. The servant bowed and reported from outside the door. Inside the small study of the main hall, Yin Yang was currently writing something. Hearing this report, he did not even bother raising his head. Quickly invite them in. We're family, so why bother with the courtesy? The servant quickly said, Master, it's not our manners, princess. It's Princess Jinjiang. Princess came with the eldest young sir of Marquis Gu's manor, saying that they had something to discuss with eldest young sir. The brush in Yin Yang's hand froze, as he lifted his head to look at the servant. He then slowly put his brush on a rack. Princess Jinjiang wants to see me. Did you hear young miss say what for? If it's just a plain visit, there's no need. She is a female guest, so she should be received by the young miss or Princess Danyang. There's no need for her to see me. The servant thought for a bit. Young miss said that they came to see master to talk about something. It did not seem to be a plain visit. Will master see her? Yin Yang put away the things on his desk and slowly said, she is a princess, while I am just a retired former prime minister. How could I refuse? Invite her in. Putting his things away, he walked out. I will see the guests in the main hall. Yes, master. Yin Jiaro led Yu Fu into the main hall. There, she saw an old man who had become so thin that he was nothing but skin and bones. Despite being just a few years older than Jiyu Huijiang, he looked like he was much older. Seeing Yu Fu, he slowly stood up with the help of his cane. In the end, he was someone who had been prime minister for multiple decades. He maintained a calm demeanor and did not show too much respect to the so-called princess. Yu Fu instantly moved forward and stopped him. Former prime minister, there's no need to be so courteous. You are the elder. We can speak while sitting. Yin Yang did not refuse. Then princess, please sit. Princess is a noble guest. Jiaro, quickly bring out some tea for princess. Bringing out tea was usually left to the servants, and the prime minister's manor was not a place that did not see noble guests visit it in the past. Yin Yang had never had Yin Jiaro personally bring tea out for a guest before. This was not out of respect for Yu Fu's status, it was clearly to get rid of her. Yin Jiaro was hoping to say a few words to support Yu Fu and naturally did not want to leave. Father, princess is an easygoing person. There's no need. Yin Yang shot a sharp glance at her. Why haven't you gone yet? Yin Jiaro looked at Yu Fu's expression, and the latter slightly nodded to her. Bowing, she left. After dismissing everyone, Yin Yang's expression became even stranger. For princess to have come to see this old man, what is the reason for it? He was very direct, thus Yu Fu expressed her thoughts directly. Former prime minister has surely heard about what happened in the palace last night. His Majesty is still young and occasionally has wild ideas that are in need of an older official to advise on. I wonder if former prime minister has any intention of advising him on this matter. Yin Yang's expression did not change. Princess must be joking. This old man has not been a court official in a long time. I am now nothing more than an old man. How could I have the ability to advise His Majesty? Not to mention advising His Majesty, but this old man doesn't even know about what happened in the palace last night. He cleanly pushed back, but Yin Jiao had already sold him out. Yu Fu smiled. Former Prime Minister, why bother being so wary of me? I know that former Prime Minister can't possibly be ignorant of what happened in the palace last night, as news has already reached most people in the capital. More importantly, former Prime Minister, doesn't the Prime Minister's manor currently wield the most influence in the capital? A flicker of light flashed through Yin Yang's eyes, but he did not speak. Yu Fu continued, former Prime Minister and Head General have always been at odds, and I am Head General's adopted daughter, so it's natural that former Prime Minister does not tell the truth. It's just that while former Prime Minister does not trust Head General has always had faith in your ability and bearing as a Prime Minister. Head General and I are the same. We believe in your loyalty and believe that you can't possibly be indifferent to His Majesty's wanton actions. Yin Yang's expression softened slightly. Marquis Jiyu appraised this old one in such a way? Yu Fu replied honestly, yes, Head General has never been hostile toward former Prime Minister. On the contrary, he has always felt that while you were in office, you managed the court situation very well and could shoulder that heavy responsibility. Only now did Yin Yang start sizing up Yu Fu in earnest. On the first day of the new year, she wore a plain white dress with a black cloak on top. She looked elegant and pure. To others, this style of dress might look taboo, however, to Yin Yang, it was very comforting. He knew that she was paying respects to the late emperor. A princess who did not have the late emperor's blood was willing to conceal her natural beauty for the sake of mourning the late emperor, Yet Ning Chengji was busy feasting during the palace banquet. He slowly opened his mouth, his voice softer than before. I had heard that Princess persuaded His Majesty to have a more moderate banquet to show respect to the late emperor, and I heard that you refused His Majesty's intention to appoint you Empress. I will tell Princess a few truths today, but it's not for Marquis Gu's sake. Instead, it's because of Princess's filial feelings for the late emperor and for Princess's integrity. Yin Yang finally let out a sigh of relief. Yu Fu also let out a sigh of relief. She said, "Since that's the case, I will tell former Prime Minister the truth. I am someone who was engaged to the heir to Marquis Gu's manor by the late emperor, and it is disrespectful for the child to go against the father's wishes, and His Majesty's actions are truly disrespectful of the late emperor's will. If former Prime Minister also feels this way, could you write a letter to His Majesty to change his mind?" Only after hearing this did Yin Yang dare to ascertain that Yu Fu had come to ask him to dissuade His Majesty from appointing her as Empress. If she had even the slightest desire for the Empress position, she would not have come to ask him, an enemy of Marquis Gu's manor. Yin Yang felt that his past view of her had been too inaccurate. The girl that he had viewed as having an unclear origin and uncertain motives actually had such a disdain for power. Yin Yang quietly reflected on himself. He, an adult in his 50s, could not compare with Yu Fu, a girl who was not even as tall as his hair was long. This was truly embarrassing. He thought for a moment, as a subject, it is natural to advise His Majesty on his unrighteous actions, but hasn't Princess sought out the wrong person? This old man is now unemployed and powerless. Even if I submitted a letter, would His Majesty listen to me? Marquis Gu has a wide number of contacts in court, like Lord Ji and the members of the cabinet. Princess should have them advise His Majesty. Yu Fu said, "Former Prime Minister is one of them. Naturally, you know whom His Majesty currently trusts the most. The cabinet was established by the late emperor, but it has already been rendered powerless. Lord Ji is already older, and Head General has already gone into the palace today to see His Majesty. There are surely some righteous subjects in court, so this matter looks very promising." Yin Yang's heart was swayed, as he fell deep into thought. Jiyu Shubai and Yin Shuo sat across from each other in the outer study and sipped tea. This was his first time coming to the Prime Minister's manor. Looking around, the corners of his lips twitched, while something seemed to be on his mind. Yin Shuo seemed to have an idea of what he was thinking. "Is eldest young sir wondering why I would invite you to a place as important as the outer study?" While saying this, he pushed a freshly poured cup of tea toward Jiyu Shubai. Jiyu Shubai smiled. "Do the other officials that visit the Prime Minister's manor not also come to the outer study? For example, what about Lord Liu Zhen, from the Board of Civil Office?" Yin Shuo carefully looked at him. Unexpectedly, he was examining the Prime Minister's manor without any reservation in front of him. Jiyu Shubai said, "Prime Minister Yin, why bother looking at me like this? When it comes to familiarity with each other's manner, Prime Minister Yin has a bit more familiarity." Yin Shuo also smiled. "That's right. This is thanks to Lord Marquis Gu's generosity. In the past, General and Prime Minister did not get along, as father didn't even bother putting on a front, never inviting anyone from Marquis Gu's manor to the manor. Lord Marquis Gu was different, inviting all members of the court whenever there was a banquet. Not even the Prime Minister's manor was excluded. It's thanks to Lord Marquis Gu's invitations that I became more and more familiar with Marquis Gu's manor. Whether my father was putting on a front or genuinely hoping for peace with the Prime Minister's manor to provide peace for Eastern Ling, you should know. He permitted someone who schemed to have me killed to come and plead for forgiveness in front of the manor in such a pretentious manner. It was in hopes that you would manage to take over for the former Prime Minister in taking care of Eastern Ling." Jiyu Shubai was secretly letting him know that they knew that Yin Shuo was the one behind the assassination attempt in Changju. However, they allowed Yin Shuo to resign. Yin Shuo faintly smiled. The times had changed. He was not afraid of Jiyu Shubai bringing up old matters. "I have never suspected Lord Marquis Gu's loyalty. As for eldest young sir, may I know the reason that eldest young sir has decided to grace me with your presence today?" Jiyu Shubai lifted his teacup, while Yin Shuo quietly waited for him to reply. It seemed that he knew what he wanted to say. Everyone knows that Prime Minister Yin is an emotionless person, but is this true or fake? Yin Shuo froze, not expecting him to ask about this. Everyone? It's just Jiao who says it. So what if I am emotionless or have emotions? Eldest young sir claims to be an affectionate person, but how do we know if that affection would last? I am not talking about myself, I am talking about Yu Fu. Yin Shuo's expression immediately changed, and Jiu Shubai took note of it. No matter how much he might feign ignorance, he could not escape the truth. Even if that expression only lasted for a second. Yin Shuo did his best to calm his expression. Eldest young sir came because of what happened during last night's palace banquet. His Majesty wants to appoint Yu Fu as Empress. Marquis Gu's manor is a loyal family that cannot go against an imperial decree. Eldest young sir has truly been put in a difficult situation and has no choice but to come to me for help. His speaking about loyalty sounded mockingly sarcastic. Jiu Shubai smiled and said, "When have I asked you for help? After confessing your feelings to Yu Fu on your wedding day, could it be that Prime Minister Yin now feels indifferent to His Majesty's plans?" Yin Shuo lost a third of his overbearing aura. Yu Fu did not hide anything from Jiu Shubai, even telling him such a private secret, yet she never treated him this way. Thinking of how the two spent their days together under one roof and how intimate they could be, Yin Shuo felt as though a fire was about to erupt from his chest. He coldly said, "I do like Yu Fu, but you can just give up. I won't help you change His Majesty's mind." Yin Shuo refused so resolutely in a way that Jiu Shubai had not expected. He paused for a moment and understood Yin Shuo's feelings. He resented Marquis Gu's manner. At the same time, he understood that nobody in Marquis Gu's manor wanted to see Yu Fu appointed as Empress. Even if an imperial decree came, Marquis Gu's manor would stand in front to block it. Yin Shuo could just sit back and reap the benefits. He could just sit back and watch Marquis Gu's manor and Ning Chengji fight to the death. Jiu Shubai sneered, "It seems that I overestimated your love of Yu Fu. Yu Fu clearly told you back then that she would neither be a concubine nor a second wife, yet you still chose to marry Princess Danyang for the sake of power. It truly is not worth it for Prime Minister Yin to risk infuriating His Majesty over such a cheap love." After saying this, he stood up. It seemed that he no longer wanted to continue speaking to Yin Shuo. Yin Shuo immediately stood up, "Don't think that you truly love Yu Fu. I have liked her from the first moment that I saw her. My love for her is not any less than what you feel for her. It's just a pity that it was Marquis Gu's manor that adopted her and not the Prime Minister's manor. If she was engaged to me, I would have done anything to convince His Majesty not to appoint her as Empress." Jiu Shubai smiled with a bit of disdain. "Prime Minister Yin, why bother deceiving yourself? If you were the one engaged to Yu Fu, you would still be just as unwilling to give up your title and power. That's why you would definitely be unable to have her. Even if you had her, you would not be able to protect her. You are only capable of protecting your power and your isolation." Yin Shuo could no longer restrain himself, as his entire body trembled. The ones that he allegedly had were nothing more than Princess Danyang and Yin Jiao. One was a wife who did not love him, and one was a sister whom he had used and abused. He did not care about them. Yin Shuo suddenly laughed, "Eldest young sir, there's no need to act so aggressively. Since you like Yu Fu, you should be prepared to give everything for her. I won't go and see His Majesty for you. And if I tell you to go?" An old voice suddenly came from the entrance to the study. Yin Shuo was stunned, as the door to the study was pushed open. Yin Yang had been standing outside the door and listening for quite some time, and Yu Fu was standing behind him. The two then entered the study. Thinking of how everything that he had just said was heard by Yin Yang and Yu Fu, Yin Shuo's embarrassment quickly turned to anger, as he looked at the servant outside. "Why did you not report when father and princess came?" The servant lowered his head and bowed in fear, not daring to answer. Yin Yang leaned on his cane. He was old but still maintained his dignity. "It's not his fault. I told him not to report. What, can I no longer tell the servants what to do in my own manner? These words carried a faint hint of disapproval for Yin Shuo's actions, and Yin Shuo quickly cupped his hands and said, "Father, son would never dare to insinuate that. What I meant was, it's fine as long as that's not what you meant. Close the door." Yin Yang turned around and fiercely shouted. The servant immediately closed the door. Jiyu Shubai was surprised that Yu Fu and Yin Yang had appeared at the same time. He looked at Yu Fu, and Yu Fu gave him a reassuring look. Their nonverbal communication was noticed by Yin Shuo, and his expression slightly changed. Yin Yang noticed this and resented his lack of growth. The son whom he had always been proud of was actually just like the other emotional and sentimental young sirs, having developed feelings for Yu Fu. It was no wonder he had gone behind his back to have Jiyu Shubai assassinated in Changju. It turned out that it was not to help him but because of his own jealousy. The thing that he could tolerate even less was, "Sure, why did you not agree to eldest young sir's request?" Yin Shuo frowned. In front of Yu Fu, he could not repeat what he had just said. He looked at Yin Yang with difficulty. He did not know what had possessed him today, actually making things difficult for him in front of outsiders, especially those from Marquis Gu's manor. Right, it was surely because Yu Fu had said something to Yin Yang. "There's no need for you to look at Princess. Just tell father. Why do you not want to accept eldest young sir's request?" Yin Shuo bit the bullet and said, "Hasn't father always disliked Marquis Gu's manor? Why do you hope that son would help them today?" Yin Yang tapped his cane on the floor. "That is a personal resentment. How could that be more important than the country's affairs? His Majesty wants to appoint a girl who is already engaged to the position of Empress. A ruler stealing a subject's wife is something that will surely be heavily criticized by future generations. As Prime Minister, how can you not advise His Majesty?" When it came to duty as an official, Yin Yang had never made a mistake. Sure enough, he and Yin Shuo were different types of people. Having been censured by his own father, Yin Shuo felt extremely troubled. He knew that as long as he took a step back, many things would be lost. He could not take a step back. Even if Yin Yang, his own father, told him to step back, he could not do it. He cupped his hands and quietly said, "Father, please forgive son for not being able to obey." Chapter 361. Unless on the night of New Year's Eve, he tried to make Yu Fu empress. On the first day of the new year, the cabinet was abolished. Ning Chengji's actions were so quick that people could not keep up, and they were completely terrifying. It's often said that a newly appointed official will perform 3 deeds to prove his worth, and His Majesty is thinking of himself as a mere official. He has only just ascended, yet he already dares to reverse the late emperor's decree. The cabinet was established right before His Majesty passed. If he was to abolish one, he should abolish the Prime Minister. How could he abolish the cabinet? Discussion filled the room, while Jiyu Huijiang frowned. Is there any word on the reason that His Majesty suddenly abolished the cabinet? Qian said, "This old servant heard that after word of Lord Marquis going into the palace spread, Senior Cabinet Minister Chen led some other officials into the palace to try and help Lord Marquis in advising on the matter of appointing an empress. His Majesty became furious after hearing their advice and decreed that the cabinet be abolished. In the end, it was related to the matter of making Yu Fu the empress." Jiyu Huijiang let out a sigh. "It was I who implicated the cabinet. His Majesty is just venting his anger. He is taking my reputation in court into account and does not dare take direct action against me. That's why he's using the cabinet as a punching bag. Head General, you can't be blamed for this. Don't blame yourself." Yu Fu suddenly said, "Everyone is doing it to try and stop His Majesty's absurd decree and for the sake of what is just. If Head General wishes to blame yourself, I should be even more to blame." Jiyu Shubai rushed to say, "This is completely unrelated to you. It's His Majesty's fault for his absurd actions. It's absolutely not your fault." Yu Fu looked at him with a forced smile. "I know. That's why I don't blame myself. Right now, the most important matter is not placing blame on yourself. Instead, it's to think of a way to solve the current situation. The most pressing matter is the cabinet." Yang Huisha nodded. "Head General, young Miss Yu Fu is right. The cabinet ministers are all righteous subjects, and we can't allow the cabinet to be abolished like this and Yin Shuo to increase his power. Laro Jin quickly agreed, that's right. If we allow Yin Shuo, that villain, to obtain more power in court, would the Jiyu family's army be able to do well? Jiyu Shubai said, it's possible that the only one currently capable of swaying His Majesty is Lord Ji. Master, another person has come to see you. In a secluded courtyard in the manor was a courtyard with green pines and a short plum tree in the corner. The servant rushed in, and a middle-aged man shouted at him, didn't father say that he was refusing all visitors because of his illness? The one who spoke was none other than Ji Daogong's eldest son, Ji Shenxian. There were all sorts of discussions about the cabinet being abolished. For the sake of not disturbing Ji Daogong's tranquility, he personally stood guard in Ji Daogong's courtyard. The servant was troubled and said, Master, this time, it's someone from Marquis Gu's manor. This servant did not dare make a decision on this. Someone from Marquis Gu's manor? Ji Shenxian hesitated for a moment. Wait here. I will personally go and report to my lord father. Entering the main hall, he turned left and headed to the second room. This was the best bedchamber with a painting of Songhe Yannian hanging outside. To the two sides of the door were large blue and white porcelain vases. Ji Daogong was lying in bed behind the screen. He was already quite old, and he was prone to getting sick. With him lying in bed, it was hard to tell if he was really sick or just faking it. Father, someone from Marquis Gu's manor has come. Will you see them? Hearing Marquis Gu's manor get mentioned, the old man lying in bed's eyelids twitched, but he did not open his eyes. Ji Shenxian respectfully waited at the side of the bed. Thinking that he would not say anything, he was about to slowly retreat from the room when he suddenly saw his beard twitch followed by a long sigh. Ji Daogong partially opened his eyes, his pupils cloudy. In this life, father has very rarely taken the initiative to step forward and speak up. As an imperial censor, I only know how to monitor the officials under strict guidelines, and I have never tried to stand in the limelight. But father has also spoken up for what was right and ignored the value of an individual life. It's just that this time, regardless of whether father is sick or not, the outcome cannot be changed. Shenxian, do you understand father? Ji Shenxian furrowed his brow and pondered for a long time before raising his head. Father has very rarely taken the initiative to speak up on various matters. However, you have never done anything that would go against your conscience. This time, father knew that he absolutely could not be reasoned with. It was not cowardice. If son could not understand the type of person father is, how could I dare consider myself a descendant of the Ji family? Ji Daogong nodded while laying in bed, as hot tears streamed from the corners of his eyes. Outside of the Ji Manor's grand gates, Qiju anxiously waited. He watched the other people from other families and manors come and leave in disappointment but did not react at all. He was someone from Marquis Gu's manor. To Lord Ji, it would be different from others. He might be able to see some results. After a long time passed, the servant who had asked them to wait outside returned, his face flushed from running through the cold winter wind. Steward Qi, please go back. Our master is truly very sick and cannot get out of bed. Steward Qi lowered his head and looked down at the ground. Of all the times for Ji Daogong to fall ill, it just had to happen when the cabinet was being abolished. Anyone with clear insights would be able to tell that there was something wrong here. He initially thought that because he was from Marquis Gu's manor, Ji Daogong would at least be willing to see him. He did not think that he would be treated the same as everyone else. It seemed that Lord Ji was determined to not take a stand. He cupped his hands toward the servant and then left in disappointment. Around the corner from the Ji manor, one person walked while speaking. Imperial Censor Lord Ji has always been exceptionally healthy. For him to use the excuse of being ill to not see any guests, His Majesty must truly be absurd. While some were feigning illness, some had truly fallen ill from frustration. After returning to his manor after being reprimanded, Chen Jilao did not eat dinner that night. According to the servant attending to him, he just sat in the main hall until the sun came up when he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell unconscious. Chen Chuxiu was in his 30s and did not often visit home. Upon hearing that Chen Jilaro had fallen ill, he immediately returned to the manor to take control of the situation. The Chen manor had become a mess and needed someone to take control to prevent any loss of dignity. Xiao, Master woke up. Master woke up. Chen Jilaro lay in bed and was struggling to breathe. The servant attending to him at the bedside heard him call for Chen Chuxiu and immediately shouted toward the courtyard. Chen Chuxiu flew into the room. Father, how are you doing? Chen Jilaro was in tears. Father has let down the late emperor, let down the Chen family's ancestors, and let down all of the citizens in the world. Chen Chuxiu understood what he meant and angrily said, how is this related to father? His Majesty is young and absurd. Father has done the right thing to advise him. As a subject, you have done all that you can. How can father be blamed? Chen Jilaro said, during the night that father did not sleep, father thought about many things. I thought that if I had known that things would end up like this, it would have been better to not uncover the truth behind the late emperor's death. Would things have been better than they were now? But even if that chance came again, father would not choose the other option. How can someone who assassinated the late emperor be allowed to ascend the throne? Even if the heir that remains, which is to say His Majesty is much more absurd than the eldest prince, isn't that right? Chen Chuxiu followed up on this. Father, son will say something unpleasant, but this generation's heirs of the Ning imperial family are made up of one who killed his father and ruler and one who is a complete fool. Who can be said to be better than the other? Neither is fit to be ruler, so how can father be blamed? Right now, father is feeling responsible because His Majesty is an unfilial son who is going against his father's wishes, which is what caused you to fall ill. Would His Majesty be willing to reconsider if you just passed away? Chen Chuxiu spoke without any consideration for taboos. If His Majesty is able to change, it would be fine if you died. Wouldn't your death have a great meaning? But if you pass away from your illness right now, not only would it leave even fewer people who would dare to advise His Majesty, but it would also leave Sun in a terrible situation. And without your support, if I continue to act as I please in the capital, I will surely end up dead sooner or later. Don't you think so too? The more the servant waiting outside listened, the more outrageous things were becoming, and he tried to calm Chen Chuxiu. Young sir, master is already in this condition, so don't say this sort of thing to anger master. Chen Chuxiu was unmoved. Don't try to sway me. What I'm saying is the truth. Father, if you pass away now, you'll be leaving the mess in court to Lord Marquis Jiyu and the other loyal officials. That's too selfish of you. The servant was terrified and went to take a look at Chen Jilaro's complexion. Who knew that not only would Chen Jilaro not be mad over what Chen Chuxiu had said, but he was struggling to try and sit up in bed. You're right. Father cannot die at a time like this. Even if father died, it would be in the imperial palace while advising His Majesty and not in my own manor. Chen Chuxiu reached out to push him back down. Don't try sitting up. Servants, quickly bring the medicine and have master drink it. Without needing to be persuaded by anyone, Chen Jilaro stared fixedly at the bowl of medicine and then eagerly drank it. Chen Chuxiu secretly laughed to himself and suddenly heard a servant report, Young sir, Imperial Uncle Ning has come with his wife to visit master. They're the only ones who would dare to visit without worrying about being suspected at a time like this. Chen Chuxiu spoke while walking out and found Ning Tangshu hurriedly walking over with his wife. Seeing him, he came to a stop. How is your lord father? Chen Chuxiu pointed into the room and led the two further away to chat. After moving to a secluded part of the courtyard, he pointed at his chest. My father has always been in good health, but this is a psychological condition. After I gave him a stern lecture, it seems that things have become less serious. Ning Tangshu let out a sigh of relief. Only you could come up with such wild ideas. It's fortunate that he's fine. I was worried that your manor would become a complete mess after he fell ill. That's why I brought Yu Yang with me. Kuan Yu Yang looked around. Husband initially wanted me to come and help you take care of some of the manor's affairs, fearing that you would be too busy taking care of your father to take care of the manor's affairs. Who knew that you would handle it this well? Chen Chuxiu cupped his hands. Many thanks, madam. Initially, I really was planning to go into the palace to seek justice for father. Father only has me as his only son. If I don't speak up for him, who will? Though my words have rekindled his desire to live, he is still getting old. Right now, I just want to stay in the manor to take care of father. No matter how important the matters in court are, they aren't as important as father's life. Kuan Yuyang could not help but look him over. In the past, she thought of Chen Chuxiu as a playboy. However, Ning Tangshu always told her that he was a piece of uncut jade. It was just that most people did not bother recognizing it. In the past, she was skeptical of this claim, but after hearing what Chen Chuxiu said and did today, she was completely convinced. Chen Chuxiu was still young. If he developed himself for a few more years, he could surely become an important player. Ning Tangshu nodded. His Majesty's actions this time were truly too absurd. His desire to appoint Yu Fu as empress was already a cause for discussion in court, yet he now wants to abolish the cabinet. The cabinet was established by the late emperor, and if he had not been assassinated, the position of the prime minister would have been abolished. Now, things sure are great, as Yin Shuo has taken advantage of the situation. Chen Chuxiu sneered. Yin Shuo didn't take advantage of the situation. He saw long ago that His Majesty is far easier to control than the eldest prince. Isn't that why he chose him and not the eldest prince? Ning Tangshu's heart chilled, as he could not help but exchange a look with Kuan Yuyang. Only they and the members of Marquis Gu's manor knew the whole truth behind the late emperor's assassination. They all knew the role Yin Shuo played in the assassination, but they did not have the evidence to prove it. Chen Chuxiu, however, was able to guess what they were thinking, and this caused them to feel a little shocked. Chen Chuxiu observed the couple's expressions and gained a vague sense of having touched on some sort of secret. He waved his hands. I was just speaking mindlessly, so there's no need for you two to take it to heart. In the end, what is the difference between the eldest prince and His Majesty? I can see clearly that nothing good can come from father working himself to death under His Majesty. It would be better to just take advantage of the cabinet being abolished to retire. Ning Tangshu hastily said, how can that be? It's true that His Majesty has gone too far this time, and it seems that His Majesty has made up his mind on his choice of empress, but there should be some room to negotiate on the matter of the cabinet. Before I came out, father has already gathered a number of members of the imperial family to try and persuade His Majesty, so it might be possible for that decree to be retracted. Senior Minister Chen's position is equivalent to that of the highest-ranked cabinet minister. He cannot leave. If he leaves, the cabinet would really be unsalvageable. Chen Chuxiu knew that he was a member of the imperial family and had the same surname as Ning Chengji. He was more invested in supporting the imperial family, thus he sighed and said, I'm just speaking mindlessly. Even if I hope for father to retire, based on my father's personality, do you think that he would? Ning Tangshu cupped his hands and bowed slightly. The Chen family is a loyal family. Senior Minister Chen even knelt in the imperial palace to uncover the truth behind the late emperor's assassination. It is worthy of Ning Tangshu's respect. Chen Chuxiu helped him up. All right, now it's time to see if Imperial Uncle Ning and the others will be able to persuade His Majesty. I feel that it won't be easy. The abolishment of the cabinet and the selection of empress are closely linked. The reason for the cabinet ministers offending His Majesty is, in the end, related to the seat of the empress. Ning Tangshu frowned and pondered the situation. It's a pity that Yu Fu and Marquis Gu's heir were engaged so long ago. Otherwise, if she became the empress, she would surely be able to help Eastern Ling prosper. Kuan Yuyang immediately retorted, what sort of thing are you saying? Could it be that Yu Fu refusing to become empress is her fault? Not to mention how unbearable it is when a ruler forces a girl to marry the son of a subject, but even if Yu Fu had not been engaged, nobody can force her to marry someone she doesn't like. I understand Yu Fu. She isn't someone who covets power, influence, or status. If she says that she won't marry someone, she absolutely will not marry then, unless, Kuan Yuyang suddenly frowned, but it was unclear what thought had come to mind. She had never rebuked Ning Tangshu in front of others, and she had always been obedient. Ning Tangshu had even joked that she was 3 or 4 times more virtuous than Eastern Ling's women. Ning Tangshu knew that her sudden rebuke of him was a result of her closeness with Yu Fu. Thinking about what he had just said, it had indeed been quite selfish. He was only thinking of Eastern Ling and did not consider Yu Fu's feelings, thus he said, "It's my mistake. As a member of the imperial family, I was only thinking of what sort of empress would benefit the country. I had no intention of blaming Yu Fu. Do not misunderstand." Kuan Yuyang's brow remained furrowed. Chen Chuxiu said, "Madam, you just said that Princess Xinjiang absolutely would not marry unless what?" Kuan Yuyang raised her head, her expression particularly ugly. "I think I know why His Majesty would do something as absurd as abolishing the cabinet, and I am guessing that he won't just abolish the cabinet. After this, he will make a move against Marquis Gu's manor. Because Yu Fu absolutely will not compromise unless His Majesty threatens the lives of everyone in Marquis Gu's manor." Chapter 362. The person in the snow. By the time that the imperial uncle and the others hastily rushed toward the palace, it was already dusk. Just as the sky was turning dark, an unsteady figure exited the Prime Minister's manor from the rear gate. It looked as if they had drank quite a considerable amount of wine. The snow-covered alleys were frigid, and there were no other people walking around. There was just the fragrance of food wafting out from somewhere. Today was the second day of the new year, and no matter how poor a family might be, they would have alcohol and meat to eat. Families would eat and chat together around their fireplaces. Yin Shuo smiled and wiped the wine from the corners of his lips, as a sarcastic smile crept onto his lips. "While commoners are able to laugh and have fun around the fireplace, I, the noble Prime Minister, was reprimanded by my father. There isn't a single relative who shares my feelings, so what is the point of fine wine and good food? I am nothing more than a poor bastard who has been thrown out." He repeatedly called himself a poor bastard. Using the wall of the small alley for support, he slowly walked out, while snow covered his body. It was as if he could not feel the cold, but his hands were turning blue from the cold. He just continued to advance using the light from the red lanterns hanging outside, but his hands were no longer able to support him after a bit of time passed. Slowly, he collapsed in the snow in the alley. The snow slowly covered his body until his back was completely covered. There was nobody else in the quiet alley. Yin Shuo looked up and tried to raise his head. However, because he was drunk, his body was unable to exert much strength, and he collapsed back to the ground. He wanted to shout, and he opened his mouth, but his lips ended up curling into a contemptuous smile. Who knew if he was feeling contempt for himself or for others? His consciousness faded, and all he could hear was the wind whistling by his ears. In a fantasy world, the sound of silver bells rang in the distance and gradually came closer. It sounded like a treasured carriage that had descended from the heavens. Two small red lanterns slowly drew closer along the long street. When it came closer, it could be seen that it was a magnificent carriage with two red lanterns hanging from it, and it was rushing along in the night. Silver bells hung from the corners of the carriage, and the carriage driver wore a thick hat and thick woolen gloves. Suddenly seeing a dark figure in the alley that resembled a person collapsed in the snow, he hesitated for a moment, and the person inside the carriage seemed to notice. "What is it?" The driver carefully looked at the entrance to the alley. The more he looked, the more puzzled he became. "Young miss, it seems like someone has collapsed in the entrance to the alley." It's the new year, so it wouldn't be that someone drank too much and collapsed at the entrance to their home, right? Yarrow Lan lifted the corner of the curtain, and Yu Fu took a look. Sure enough, it was a person. Go and take a look. If it really is a person, put them in the rear of the carriage and bring them back. There will be a lot of snow tonight. If they are left in the snow, they will freeze to death. Yes. The driver responded and leaped down to carry that person into the rear of the carriage. The carriage rushed back to Marquis Gu's manor, and Chi Ju was waiting outside. "Young miss has returned. Master is waiting for young miss to eat dinner." Yu Fu nodded and replied, "Senior Minister Chen collapsed from an illness, and the matter of the cabinet being abolished is still at stake. I had to go and see him. Fortunately, young Sir Chen is a smart man, and Senior Minister is not in any serious trouble." Chi Ju cheerfully praised Buddha. That's good, that's good. If Senior Minister Chen is in good health, there will be one more loyal official to advise His Majesty. Naturally, Yu Fu was optimistic about Senior Minister Chen's condition, but she also understood that Ning Chengji abolished the cabinet because he did not want to listen to their advice. If the ruler did not want to listen to advice, no matter how righteous and loyal the officials might be, they could not compare with a traitor. Qi Ju directed the driver to unload the carriage when he suddenly saw the person in the rear. "Young miss, this is," the driver said, "Steward Qi, we found a person collapsed in the snow on the side of the road, and young miss brought them back for fear of them freezing to death." Qi Ju ordered for a lantern to be brought over and carefully examined the person. Seeing the person wearing purple robes, he knew that this person was not a commoner. Flipping the person over to look at his face, he nearly dropped the lantern in shock. "Young miss, have you seen who this is?" Yu Fu was about to go inside when she heard Qi Ju's shocked voice. Stepping forward to take a look, she could not help but leap back. Enemies really do cross paths surprisingly often. How could we have brought him back? Qi Ju was certain that this person was Yin Shuo. He then shifted a little closer and sniffed. "Young miss, Prime Minister Yin must have gone out after drinking too much and then accidentally fell to the ground. Should we send him back to the Prime Minister's manor?" When the driver heard that the person whom he had saved was Yin Shuo, he immediately wiped his brow. "Send him back? Young miss, why don't I just toss him back where we found it and allow him to perish on his own?" Even the servants of Marquis Gu's manor knew that Yin Shuo was not a good person and that he was the one who fervently opposed Marquis Gu's manor. Yu Fu glanced at him and knew that calling for him to perish on his own was considered light. It was likely that he was thinking to himself that he wanted to toss Yin Shuo into the snow and let him freeze to death. If Yu Fu had known back then that it was Yin Shuo, she might have hesitated for a moment. But now, Yu Fu said, "Since we already brought him back, just put him in the courtyard that Jiaro and the others previously stayed in. Steward Qi, go and tell Head General and the others about this. Just say that I will be going to check on Prime Minister Yin's condition first before going to the main hall. Tell them to please not wait for me to eat." Qi Ju hesitated for a moment and then ordered for Yin Shuo to be carried inside. The servants placed Yin Shuo on a couch and removed his snow-covered outer layers. They then washed his hands and feet with hot water. There was a brazier in the room, and Yu Fu checked his pulse. After verifying that his pulse was stable, she stood up and left. When she left, she ordered 2 male servants to take care of him, who knew that just after stepping outside, she would see Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi angrily rush over. "Little Yu Fu, we heard that you caught Yin Shuo. Where is he?" Yu Fu saw that the ones who had come bore bad intentions and wanted to stop them, but the 2 had already charged into the room. "Fifth brother, sixth brother, you must not be rash." Yu Fu hastily chased after them and found that Jiyu Shubai, Jiyu Juji, and the others had also rushed over. Everyone entered the room and saw Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi blankly staring at Yin Shuo, who was laying in bed. He was currently asleep, and he seemed to be muttering something. His brow was tightly furrowed, and he had a horrified expression. In everyone's mind, Yin Shuo always had a sinister smile and had a calculating expression. This was the first time that they had seen him unconscious. Jiyu Yi held up a dagger. Seeing him in this vulnerable condition, "I really want to kill him to just put an end to things, but I can't bring myself to do it. I'm so useless. Fifth brother, do you want to try?" He handed the dagger to Jiyu Xiong, and while Jiyu Xiong was hesitating, Jiyu Juji stepped forward to take the dagger. "All right, stop messing around. Even if you want to kill him, you can't kill him like this." Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi looked at him. "Second brother, what good method do you have?" "Second brother." Jiyu Shubai looked at him with a frown. "Stop messing around. Even if Yin Shuo is killed, it won't change His Majesty's mind. On the contrary, it would give him something that he could use against Marquis Gu's manor. It would not benefit us." "Yu Fu, how is he?" Yu Fu said, "He probably drank too much and collapsed in the snow. Fortunately, we found him early, and he only passed out. There isn't anything seriously wrong with him." She observed everyone's expressions and tentatively said, "When we found him, we did not know that it was Yin Shuo. We thought that he was just a normal citizen. Since we've confirmed his identity, it would be better to send him back to the Prime Minister's manor, right? Gu Yi angrily shouted, he is the source of all evil, so it would be too kind to him if we just sent him back. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.